Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Tripura University, I welcome you all to this webinar. Under the able guidance of our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Ganga Prasad Prasen, we decided to hold this webinar to give you a flavor of the scientific and the technological achievements of the women scientists of Northeast India. So, here we are with the webinar on Women in Science, the Northeast chapter. Welcome once again. We are very happy to let you know that we have among us some of the eminent scientists. To start with, our keynote speaker, Padma Bhushan, Honorable Dr. Manju Sharma, who's the former Secretary, Department of Biotechnology, Government of India, and the NASI DST Distinguished Women Scientist Chairperson. We also have with us as speaker list of senior as well as relatively younger scientists from different institutes and universities of Northeast. So we would be joined very soon by our Honorable Vice Chancellor, our keynote speaker, who's known to be very precise, on time, and one of the finest biotechnologists of our country is already there. You can see them. And we do hope we are going to have a very good interaction and a very good experience to know what Northeast has to offer with the blessings of some of the senior most and the finest that we have in our country in terms of Dr. Manju Sharma being there with us. Thank you, speakers. Thank you, ma'am. All of you that you agreed to be part of this. We understand how busy you are all. And now, till we are waiting for our Honorable Vice Chancellor to join in, we would like to introduce you to our speakers, especially the budding scientists who are here as the participants for the webinar. Ashish, could you please put in the introductions, please? So now we would start with our keynote speaker. The Padma Bhushan Honorable Dr. Mrs. Manju Sharma, the former Secretary, Department of Biotechnology, Ministry of Science and Technology, Government of India, was the NASI Chair Professor. Dr. Manju Sharma, after a brilliant academic career both in India and abroad, and a brief stint in the Forest Research Institute and the Indian Council of Medical Research, joined the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India, and eventually rose to become the Secretary of Department of Biotechnology. For her outstanding contribution in developing biotechnology in the country, she was conferred with the Padma Bhushan by the Government of India in 2007. She has been instrumental in founding a number of institutes and organizations in the country. Next slide, Ashish. She created the Biotechnology Consortium India Limited to promote research in the country, founded the Indian Institute of Advanced Research in Gandhinagar, Gujarat, to name a few. For her phenomenal contribution, she has been given a large number of awards, like the Chandaben Monbai Patel Industrial Research Award for Women Scientists in 1991, the Borlong Award in 1995, the Dr. B.P. Pal Memorial Award from the Indian Science Congress Association in 2001, G.B. Modi Science Award 2002, the Honorary Doctor She was the first woman president of National Academy of Science India and was the president of Indian Science Congress in 1999. In brief, she has made enormous contribution in the development of biotechnology in the country and promoting the cause of women scientists in particular. So now we have already our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Ganga Prasad Prasen. Welcome, sir. Now that you are
Hello.
there under your guidance, we have been able to initiate this webinar. And without spending any more time, I now request our Honorable Vice Chancellor to welcome the gathering and inaugurate this webinar. Over to
Yeah.
sir.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Sayan Roy Chaudhary, and good afternoon to all. At the very outset, I beg apology for delay in my joining because I was engaged in some other work. Uh, at the first time, at the very outset, I convey my greetings to all of you on behalf of Tripura University. Respected Dr. Manju Sharma, Upasana Bora Sinha, Dr. Sayon Roy Chaudhary, and all other women scientists, delegates, faculty members, Professor Narsiran S. Islam, and many more who are part of this program. Um, uh, uh, I, I welcome all of you in this webinar on women's and science, which is very, very important topic. We all know that, our women, our female teacher, our female scientists, women scientists have been playing a very, very important role. And in education in India, our women faculty, women scientists, women research scholar are not inferior to their male counterpart. Even in Tripura University, yesterday I was checking the data. During last year, the out of total student, the percentage of female student is 51.9%. In Manipur, also in many departments, the percentage of female student is more than male student, particularly in science subject like botany, zoology, biochemistry, biotechnology. Number of female students are more than male student. In many universities in India, we have seen that there are there are women professors, scientists, researchers. In India, there are a few women vice chancellor also. There are women scientists. Our women are pilot also.
I think
Uh,
there is
Many
some
female students
network
are
issue
studying in IIT
why
also,
it
in
has
IIM
got
also.
halted.
They have occupied a very, very key position in national and international level. From India, I know many women scientists have migrated to Western countries also, and their contribution is very, very remarkable. Therefore, I, as a professor, as a vice chancellor, consider that our female member, our female scientists, our women scientists are not inferior to their male counterpart in most of the field. Although their population is less in some states like UP and Bihar, the number of female students are little less than the male student. But in Northeast India, in Manipur, in Tripura, in Assam also, they are around 50%. There are two districts in Manipur where uh, there are 1,120 female member per 1,000 male member. So that means in many areas, in many districts, number of female are more than male. And also in this age of globalization, privatization, and information technology, where we have seen our females members are doing very good job. There are some states in India like Jharkhand, Bihar, where, as I have told you, that the number of female school-going students are less than their male. I was shocked to hear that in one of the district of Jharkhand, nearly 40% of the girls students drop out from their school because in those schools, in those rural area, there was no washroom for female students. It is very, very shameful that in this age also, that point has not been taken care by the concerned authority. I think knowing all these things, our Honorable Prime Minister has always been emphasizing that we must have Swachh Bharat. Swachh Bharat, then Swachh Abhiyan is, construction of washroom, toilet in every places, in public place particularly. So after this movement of the Swachh Bharat, we have seen that in India, even in railway station, even in airport, lot of improvement has been done. Cleanliness has been done, and there are separate washroom, toilet for female also in many places where there was no before. So what I mean to tell here is that the present government has also recognized the requirement of female candidate in all aspects. And I need not repeat again and again that in many areas in India, in science and technology, in social science, female faculty member, female research scholars are doing far, far better than male also. Therefore, I would like to say that female member, female scholar, female educationist have been playing a very, very important role in developing our society. I know that there are thousands of family in Manipur also where the sole bread earner, the sole income earner is ladies only, wife only. Her husband and her children are solely depending on the income generated, income earned by the female member. This is a fact in Manipur. This number is in terms of lakh because the male member could not get either any job or they could not work do better. And many female member have been earning their income by way of trading. So trading is very common. So not only in education, even in trading also, in business also, women are doing very well. There are many, many successful women entrepreneurs in India whom Government of India have awarded the best entrepreneurship award of the year. I know two from Manipur, and likewise there are many from other countries also. So I am happy to know that in different states of India, where women, voice or their contribution was not recognized before, but now government has fully recognized, and we are considering their demand. In Tripura University, I am happy to inform you that we provide hostel accommodation in the campus to all those female students who apply. But for male, we have less hostel than female. So we always give due recognition, due importance to the female student, female scientist, female faculty member, because their contribution is not less than their male counterpart. So, considering the importance of the female member, considering the importance of women scientists, scholars in the field of education, science, and technology, the selection of this topic for webinar is very proper, very timely, and very necessary also. I would like to thank our colleague Dr. Sayan Roy Chaudhary for selecting a very, very appropriate topic and also inviting all those women scientists, scholars from Northeast India and also from beyond Northeast India in this very, very important program. And I know that the deliberation, the contribution, which will be provided by our scholar, our members, our invitees, will be very useful for those who will participate in this webinar. So last but not the least, I congratulate Dr. Sayan Chaudhary and all those women scientists, scholars who will take part in this webinar. And with this few observation, I open this webinar. I declare this webinar open, and I wish all success of this webinar and future also. I would like to request our faculty, Dr. Sayan Chaudhary, to organize such webinar in other relevant topic in the fields of science and technology for the benefit of our students in general and women scientists in particular. Thank you very much, and I wish all success to all of you. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your encouraging words. We do continue to we assure you that we are going to continue this endeavor, and as long as we have the blessings and the support of the faculty members who have joined in and our seniors who are here, as speakers and keynote speakers, we would ensure that we contribute equally, and not only that, we contribute meaningfully to science and technology. Thank you, sir.
Thank
Now,
you.
without, thank you, sir. Without wasting any further time, since we are right on time, we would just move to the presentation of our keynote speaker, Dr. Manju Sharma. Madam, we have just introduced Madam to all of those who are new to the field. This is a lifetime opportunity. I've had the opportunity of listening to her before, and I'm sure you all would find it extremely interesting. Over to Madam.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you for your very
Hello.
kind introduction. Can you hear me?
Yes,
हेलो
ma'am, we can hear you.
You can keep
आई
changing the
वो एक
music.
प्रोग्राम में बैठा हूँ एक वेबिनार
Yes,
में
ma'am.
बाद में बैठा
Okay?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. We'll keep
हूँ
changing
थोड़ा
the slide
बिजी हूँ एक
as we
प्रोग्राम में
go
बैठा
through it.
हूँ
All
शाम को
right.
भी प्रोग्राम है दूसरा 2-3 प्रोग्राम है आज ठीक है ओके
Uh-huh.
अभी
Should I start?
Yes, ma'am. Please do.
Okay. Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Shaun Roy Chaudhary, other distinguished faculty members, speakers in this webinar, and participants, and of course, my very, very dear students. I'm extremely happy to note that Tripura University has taken a keen interest in science and technology, and especially for women, women's involvement in their activities. Today, science and technology intervention in all spheres of development has become very, very essential, especially when the Honorable Prime Minister has said that Vikas, the development of the country, is the key and the highest priority. I think science and technology will play a very important role, and particularly women scientists have a key role to play. Our former president, Dr. Abdul Kalam, while inaugurating a national seminar on women science and technology in Bangalore, had said, and I quote him, definitely, next slide, please. Next slide. Definitely, all women scientists can play an important role in the national development. He said the number of women scientists world over has been growing at a faster pace, uh, removing any impediments that come in the way of our harnessing this vast pool of brilliant, hardworking, and dedicated knowledge power should be the focus of the seminar. That was what he said in the national seminar. Next, please keep changing the slide, huh? People-centric sustainable development is one of the main issue which I want to focus in this lecture, and ensures that women's equal access to science, technology, education, training, economic resources, information, communication, and marketing. These are all the very important areas where we have to ensure that women are involved. Women constitute half of the humanity, and still, if you see the numbers in mathematics, physical sciences, engineering is very low. Although women professionals seldom reach the pinnacle of the hierarchy in academic and research institutions. Yet, if you see the area of biological sciences, women are in very large numbers. And I'll explain this as I go on. Talents of women have to be viewed not from the perspective of gender equity. It must be understood that full involvement of women in science and technology endeavors is the most essential thing for rapid economic development and sustainable happiness of the family. That's the key part, sustainable happiness of the family. Before I move on to discuss the areas where women have played an important role, I want to mention that science and technology policy of the country has always included women scientists and technologists, particularly women, and their development and their role in the economic development. So I will explain this when I go on, that all the policies of the country have had this importance of women. They have reflected in the policy statements. The first one, 1958, which is called the SPR, the Scientific Policy Resolution, which was done in the, under the overall guidance of our first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, who really laid the foundation of science and technology in this country. And he then, after the scientific policy resolution, there was a technology policy resolution and a technology policy implementation committee. Then came a new resolution, Science and Technology Policy 2003. This was done with a lot of focus on research and development. And the last one, the Science, Technology and Innovation Policy 2013, which was approved by Parliament, which was made rather in consultation with the large number of scientists all over the country. The first statement, the Scientific Policy Resolution, had very clearly mentioned to ensure creative talent of men and women is encouraged and finds full scope in scientific activity. It was stated in it was just a one-page document. The next one, Science and Technology Policy 2003, again emphasized to promote the empowerment of women in all science and technology activity and ensure their full and equal participation. And the next one, please. All these statements, one way or the other, have, as I said earlier, very clearly emphasized the role of women in the overall economic progress of the nation. Not only economic, in fact, socio-economic development of the nation. And the focus has always been on both science as well as technological aspects. Next one, please. We have had a number of international initiatives earlier. Uh, as you know, international initiatives. For example, the International Women's Day. It was started in 70s, and with the help of a large number of women scientists who had gathered in Denmark, and then it was decided that 8th March will always be the International Women's Day, and it will be celebrated all over the country. Especially highlighting the needs, requirements, the importance of women, all these aspects. There have been many initiatives. For example, uh, we have an international advisory committee, a panel on women for science. Then the Third World Academy had an advisory panel on women in science. In China, the College of Agricultural Development, and there is a specially designated agriculture university for women. And then there is a consultative group on international agricultural research. And more than 8,000 scientists and technicians and managers are managing this. There was the first UN conference in Mexico, 1975. And then we had the Beijing Declaration. I'm sure many of you are aware, 1995. And there have been very important reports. UNUIA's report on women in science. I happen to be the chairman of this committee which wrote this report, and we presented it to United Nations. Then TWAS, the Standing Committee on Women, UNESCO report on women in science, and then there are so many uh, activities which has taken place under the TWAS, under UNESCO, and there is a special organization called TWOWS and OECD, etc., etc. The Beijing Declaration, which was adopted in the Fourth World Conference on Women, aimed to achieve the goals of equality, development, and peace of women globally. Next one. I want to mention here at this point that there is very recently, just say few days ago, a study of a University of Michigan on women was published, and I happen to see that, and that states that women hold 1 in 5 top jobs in science, technology, mathematics, and engineering. That is STEM. It's a very important thing. Women hold 5 out of 10 jobs in all these areas. 50% of higher education, especially in STEM, is involving women scientists. And then it was stated by a very eminent woman, Susan Solomon, who is the head of the New York Stem Cell Foundation. And she said, when women are prevented from reaching their full potential, the entire field suffers. I'm sure you'll appreciate this particular statement of Susan Solomon. This year it has been a very lucky and a very important year, as we have had 2 Nobel Prizes in chemistry, and I'm sure it was a great excitement for all of us. Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuel Charpentier, who got the Nobel Prize in chemistry, especially for creating the genetic scissors, which can rewrite the code of life. This year, woman also got a Nobel Prize in literature, and that makes 3 women in 2020. I think it's a very good number that got the Nobel Prize this year in 2020. So this is regarding some brief remarks on the international initiatives. I come to the very important aspect of Government of India's initiative. And here I want to tell you that during the sixth 5 year plan, this one, next, no, previous one. You show the previous one? Okay. During the sixth 5 year plan, when the plan document was being prepared, Professor M.S. Swaminathan, I'm sure all the ladies here know, all the women scientists, he wanted me to write a special chapter and introduce one chapter for in the plan document on the development of women, and it was his initiative. I think he is one of the key persons who has played the most important role in bringing this whole aspect of importance of women in the socio-economic development of the country. We have now a separate ministry for women and child welfare, a very important scheme for science and technology for women by DST, which, as I said, I had written. I was the first one who wrote down this scheme, which was included in the sixth 5 year plan document. And I happened to be the first director of the scheme when the scheme was implemented by DST. And today we have a very similar scheme, which I introduced again when I became the secretary of the Department of Biotechnology for biotechnology for the welfare of women. And this scheme has taken off extremely well. In fact, both the schemes, the DST scheme, I'm sure many of you must have benefited from Kiran, and that is the main integral part of the DST scheme, and then the DVT scheme. We have something like a biocare, Sparsh. These are all very important aspects of women who are being involved in science and technology. There are technology parks, exclusive technology parks for women, For example, the Biotechnology Park in Chennai, which is run by women, which has women entrepreneurs, and that park has done exceedingly well over the last, say, 15 years or so. It was established in the Golden Jubilee year of the independence. Next one, please. Next slide. Yeah, the global capacity building is again a very important subject with which we are familiar, and we have seen that there are many, women scientists and technologists who are engaged in promoting the cause of capacity building, especially including the women. That is the most important thing. Capacity building is a very important subject for the development of many areas world over. But involvement of women is one of the important issues which has been raised by a number of women scientists. Next, next. Now I come to a very critical subject which has been reflected all over the world. That is the inclusiveness of women on of the in on part of SMT leadership world over. The science and technology leadership has to take note of this aspect. There has to be a commitment at the highest level, and for that, we have to review the policies and procedures. The whole area of recruitment, promotion, giving awards, transparency in the appointments. That is the key issue. Leadership, training, and mentoring. Again, I say mentoring is something which is required to promote women scientists, to enthuse them to come and join the stream of science and technology. International cooperation again is very helpful because it can provide for training, higher training, especially in the new areas, upcoming frontline areas of science and technology, gives scholarships for this purpose and exchange of experts. Women scientists must be included in the delegations which are sent abroad, where we have possibility of getting them exposed to cutting edge research in, let us say, in modern areas of nanotechnology or artificial intelligence. And of course, biotechnology has all the areas like stem cell research, cell biology, developmental biology. All these are very important to ensure the livelihood at the grassroots level. We cannot ignore, we just cannot, we should only not see the women who are educated and who have joined university, but to ensure the livelihood at the grassroots level, we have to identify the appropriate technologies. We have to start training centers, knowledge centers for these women in rural areas. The basic philosophy, I feel, has to be to advocate science and technology application for foster for job oriented economic growth and overall social happiness. Technological empowerment of women is something which has to be taken note of. Especially, I want to mention here all here, of course, I've listed all the very important aspects like training of the trainers, setting up of knowledge centers, a very good, vast institutional framework. Simple, where there is no bureaucracy, no red tapeism, simple institutional framework. And we have to make use, and I'm sure that Tripura University must be making use of 100 Krishi Vigyan Kendras which have already been established in the country. And they are very important, extremely important for the training of the grassroots women workers, especially the rural areas. Uh, we have to give special importance to women scientists who should become the mentors for these rural women. Many of the women scientists are working in the rural areas, like in the Krishi Vigyan Kendras or medical rural development centers of Indian Council of Medical Research, and they have to take note of that they must become the mentors for the rural women. Then only they can promote the cause of development of these women. Next one, please. When I come to this issue of the DVT-DST projects, and especially the areas of agriculture, healthcare, biotechnology, information technology, etc., which are very important when the women scientists want to progress, they have to start writing proposals. I want to emphasize on that. Women scientists must write down projects, proposals, and not only individually, not only let us take the example of Tripura University. If Tripura University can join hands with the IBST, the Institute for Bioresource and Sustainable Development, which again I was responsible for setting it up in consultation with the then Chief Minister. And the institute is meant to cater to the requirements of all bioresource group, the biotechnology group in the Northeast region. So if Tripura University women scientists want to submit some projects to DST or DBT for their research work, they can collaborate with IVST and joint projects can be submitted to these funding agencies. In fact, today, the funding agencies prefer these large joint projects rather than just single projects from isolated scientists. I come to the other issue of the academies, role of academies in promoting the cause of women scientists. I've started with the US panel, that US Academy of Sciences, and it said the Academy for National Academy of Sciences in United States. It stated such underuse of precious human capital, unless a deeper talent pool is tapped, it will be difficult for a country to maintain our competitiveness in science and engineering. Now you can think that this is coming from a country like United States of America, and they have even realized that if we do not use this precious human capital, the 50% mostly in most of the countries, it will be a waste of the talent and we'll not be able to develop our country, progress as fast as we want. Therefore, in the next slide, I want to tell you that academies have to lead the way. Next one, please. Next one. Academies have to lead the way. All over the world, the academies, other professional bodies, they are important for welcoming the women scientists and engineers in many scientific and research related activities. For example, they have to include gender issues in their agenda, widen the nomination pool. I'm sure we understand what I mean when I say widen the nomination pool. The women scientists must be nominated for the fellowships and memberships of these academies. Continuous data monitoring, increasing women's participation and visibility, and sponsoring and evaluating research. Academies can do many of these things because their agenda is to promote both male and female scientists. Now, next slide shows what are the key tools of management practices. Just go to the next one. Okay, top level commitment. And Honorable Vice Chancellor, I am very happy to hear from you that you have given special attention to the women scientists in the University of Tripura.
Yes.
Also, it is important that we should review the policies and procedures for the gender impact. If there has to be an impact of gender equality, we have to look at the policies and procedures in a particular institution. Transparency in communication, recruitment, promotion, etc. Then widening the inner circle. This is also very important. That there is a small group or always a committee or something like a inner circle, which is responsible for the overall uh, 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 recruitment, promotion, awards, rewards, etc., appointments of the women scientists. And that has to be widened. We have to include women scientists in that. I think, Honorable Vice Chancellor, I hope I have been able to make my point that whenever we have such inner circles, we must include some of the women scientists. Leadership training and mentoring. This I have already mentioned. Support a healthy work family balance and regular monitoring sex disaggregated statistics. See, women have a dual role in life. They have to look after their family, then they have to look after the children. They want to promote their professional career. They want to do science. So we have to balance their work family relationship. Next one, please. Advocate and promote education and career of women. Because they have a dual role, we have to pay special attention for doing this. Engage women as partners in the S&T global capacity building. uh, Capacity building is one of the key areas when the women scientists have to be promoted. Creating inclusive institutional climate and advising governments and key, which are that women can be very key players on specific issues. You see, women have to be involved in developmental activities, more and more developmental activities, and where women scientists they have a role to play. That is, they will use the science and technology intervention uh, to play an important role in the development of women. Here I want to show you that this James Fedilla in the Ford Motor in United States. And what did she say? Women enrich SNT. Voices that are silenced or ignored for whatever reason represent not only an injustice but also a valuable resource that has been wasted, a tragic waste of human capital. This is a very serious
Huh?
issue, not only
Huh?
in India but all over the world. All over the world we have recognized, and there are so many discussions. In fact, when I was writing that report on women for science the chairman, I consulted a large number of women scientists from different parts of the country, not only there but in the Third World Academy meetings, which I have been attending for many years. Again, this issue of how to involve more and more women scientists. And then I came back when I was working in the National Academy of Sciences. I wanted a very large number of women scientists to entrepreneurs, basic scientists, professors, doctors, engineers, all these to come together and have a dialogue. And I was successful in organizing this mega event, which you can see on the screen, where the Science and Technology Minister, Dr. Anil Kakotkar, Professor Ashutosh Sharma, the Secretary of the Department of Science and Technology, and Professor M.S. Swaminathan, and you see the Director of the Cater Center for Genetic Engineering of United States. In fact, we gave her the fellowship of the National Academy. Now, this mega event had evolved more than 1,000 1,200 scientists were present here. It was a very large event in the. I'm sure some of you must have attended because I had invited from all over the country people, and this discussed over 2 days. What are the key areas where women should be involved? Agriculture practices, uh, healthcare areas, then engineering, IIT directors were there, and how women can become entrepreneurs, capacity building, mentoring the young women from the very early stage so that they can be involved and they can become ultimately leading scientists of the country. So these were all the areas which we covered, and the report was submitted to government for further implementation. Next one, please. Next one. I come to the end of my talk, and I want to just emphasize some of the points which you can see. Science and technology must be harnessed in a gender sensitive manner. There is urgent need for confidence building amongst the women scientists. It is important to understand and take into account the multiple role women have to play and provide suitable support systems to reduce their drudgery and strain. This is very important to reduce the drudgery of women, particularly when they are involved in the agricultural practices. And I'm sure, Honorable Vice Chancellor, you are aware that there
Yes.
are tools which the women use in agriculture, and those tools are meant for women. They are very heavy, they are very difficult to use. So we have to devise even the equipments which will suit the physical requirements of women and reduce their drudgery at every level. Next one, please. Next slide. To consider health, food, and nutritional security absolutely critical. Advise the governments to launch specific targeted missions to take care of the pregnant and nursing mothers and children in particular. The next point is very important. That's what I said, that we have an institute where we can collaborate, the Tripura University scientists can collaborate with IBST, networking amongst women scientists and technologists, academic and research institutions, NGOs, international bodies, and government. The women scientists have to come together, not work in isolation. I think for their progress, this is a very important issue, networking among women scientists. Next one, please. The Millennium Summit has recommended an unprecedented and extensive use of knowledge for the welfare of humankind. The third Millennium Development Goals also call for gender equity and empowering of women. See, technological women. Next one, please. Next one. I'm coming to the end now. Academies have a very important role to play, as I said earlier, and they can create knowledge based society. Full involvement of women scientists and technologists create strong, sustainable science and technology base, which will affect all social levels. The intellectual capital of half of the human resource on the planet should become the integral part of accelerated SNP drive towards progress, peace, and happiness of humanity. Why I have emphasized this point, and I've written it down in this slide, because I want the women scientists in the university to please take note of this, what I had stated in that paragraph. This is just to show you. I'm sure all of you recognize Madame Marie Curie, and this is the general revolution in science and technology. You see the French Physics Olympiad team, which is all young women. We had sent them abroad to go and participate in that. Here you see the training. These are the two extremes. This is the extreme end of science, and here you see the other strata of the society where the girls are learning the tissue culture techniques, and this is how they will teach the farmers, the farming women, farm women to progress further. Tissue culture, is one of the areas of very advanced research, but it can be directly applicable for the economic and livelihood gains for the rural areas and the farm women in particular. Next one, please. Next, look at what Marie Curie said. And I want the young students who are listening to me, in particular the women scientists, the younger generation, how difficult it was for Marie Curie at that time to progress. But yet she said, we don't have to fear. We don't have to be afraid of anything. And nothing is to be feared. It is only to be understood. Now is the time to understand more so that we may fear less. This is what Marie Curie said when there were very difficult conditions in the lab where she was working, and there was no cooperation from senior people. But she said, no, nothing to worry. We have to become fearless, and we have to start understanding the situation more. uh, Women have to be equal partners in science and technology enterprise. Their intellectual power, the wide-ranging capabilities, innovation, leadership, etc., must be fully recognized. What has happened in our country for many years earlier, that this was not recognized, and we have to know that we have to utilize their talent. We cannot wait. We have to do this urgently. And the latest initiative of the Government of India, Honorable Prime Minister, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. This Abhiyan, this was launched only to encourage more and more young women students to join the mainstream of developmental activities. The key to social, educational, scientific, and economic development of women is that we should involve them. Inclusiveness of women at all levels. Next slide, please. Next one is, and when women are involved, that's what Mahatma Gandhi said. When a man is educated, an individual is educated. When a woman is educated, a family and a country are educated. Next one, please. The last one. Last one. Is this the last? Okay, this is the last one. Honorable Vice Chancellor, last year we celebrated the 150th birth anniversary of both Ba and Bapu. The National Academy of Sciences had taken the lead in celebrating this, organizing seminars, lectures, etc., on the sayings of Mahatma Gandhi. And I have put this slide where I wanted, we have always heard Bapu, but we have never heard Ba. And what did she say? Whenever you have truth, it, it must be given with love, or the message and the messenger will be rejected. This is my message to the young scientists. We have to be polite. We have to treat everybody with love and affection, with respect. And Bapu said, to call women the weaker sex is a libel. It is man's injustice to woman. If by strength is meant moral power, then women is immeasurably man's superior. This is what Bapu said, and it was in many of his messages. He made it very clear that we have to regard women as an equal partner and understand that they have the energy, they have the mental capability, they have the power to be as strong a partner in the development of the country, of the globally, all over the world. They have been recognized, and we must continue to give importance to our women manpower. Thank you very much, and I wish this seminar all the best. And I hope there will be important messages which will come out from the seminar and which will promote the cause of women scientists in the Northeast region. Thank you, Sean, and thank you, Honorable Vice Chancellor, for your invitation. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you, madam. That was indeed a very excellent deliberation. You have clearly reflected on the importance of women in science. You've discussed about how women is an integral part of the socio-economic aspect of developmental activities, and therefore women is very important and its involvement in overall developmental activities. You have clearly emphasized on that. Thank you, madam. That was indeed a very excellent deliberation. You have talked about the inclusiveness of women in science and technology. I am personally privileged to listen to your scientific knowledge. Thank you, madam, for sharing your knowledge with us. Now, before handing over the time to our next speaker, I would take this small time to introduce our second speaker of today's event, Dr. Shayan Roy Chaudhary, Department of Microbiology, Tripura University. Dr. Roy Chaudhary has obtained her PhD in 2001 from Calcutta University. She received the DBT Postdoctoral Fellowship in Life Science in 2001 and the DST Fast Track Scientist Award in 2003. She did her postdoctoral training at Jadavpur University, Technical University of Munich, Humboldt University, Berlin. She also formed the Microbial Technology Group in 2004 upon joining West Bengal University of Technology, and then the group moved to Tripura University in 2015. Her group works on development of tailor-made microbial consortium of wastewater treatment and biofinishing of products. She received R&D funding of INR 8.36 crores and a funds for conducting training of INR 11.27 lakhs. She received a Center of Excellence in Environmental Technology and Management from MHRD under the FAST scheme in 2014. She has 5 technologies transferred, 14 filed from Indian patents, 4 awarded with international and 2 awarded with Indian patents, 58 peer-reviewed papers, 14 book chapters, and 1 edited book. She had also won the DST Lockheed Martin India Innovation Growth Program Award in 2014, EMSI Excellence in Microscopy in Life Science 2018, Regional Climate Launchpad winner in the year 2019, Visitors Award in Technology category in 2019. She then represented India in 2014 in USA as well as in the Netherlands in 2019 because of her innovative work. Till date, 10 students have received PhD under her supervision and have been placed in industry and academia in India and abroad. The first PhD thesis from Department of Microbiology, Tripura University, has been submitted under her supervision in the year 2020. She has formed the first startup of Tripura University. That's a brief introduction about our second speaker, Dr. Shayan Roy Chaudhary, Department of Microbiology, Tripura University. Over to you, madam, now.
Thank you, Jimmy. There is a minor change in the schedule, as you see, because Dr. Professor Latha Ranjan has a class, and so should be the last speaker. Now, can I request Ashish to present the slide? Microbe works on microbial technology, especially the waste to wealth approach. How we could actually address the problems associated with environment and human health. Next slide, please. At a glance, this tells you about the different area in which my group works. That includes the biodiversity screening, looking for new antimicrobials from plant origin, developing microbial formulations, mostly biofertilizer, for agricultural sustenance, looking for alternative microbial options for industrial processes, be it biomining or metal polishing with bacteria, be it by microbial enzymes as detergent additive, or for dehairing of hide, or for degumming of natural fibers. And finally, it is bioremediation. That's the place where we focus more, where we develop tailor-made microbial consortia for different kind of wastewater treatment, with a speciality that these systems are often more rapid and are a scum-free system. Next slide, please. Two of the major problems that the mankind faces is minimizing the pollution due to anthropogenic activity and reducing the use of fresh water for non-potable application. In spite of the fair warning by UN that by 2025, about 40% of the world population would be suffering from water stress, we continue to use the fresh water for non-potable application to the extent of 80 to 89% per day. Hence, these are certain areas where one needs to really be careful, and that's exactly where the group has been working. We have two approaches: either process whereby we make bioprocesses or microbial processes which are more rapid and they ensure that the wastewater is treated, wastewater from agricultural runoff, from petrochemical effluent, or it could also be from sewage. The other option here is where we convert the wastewater into a byproduct of economic value, like the biofertilizer, liquid biofertilizer that is developed from the dairy wastewater. The third option in which we look to or develop the solutions is by minimizing the pollution as a result of microbial application, like use of biofertilizer instead of chemical fertilizer, but biofertilizers which enhance the yield at par with the chemical fertilizer. Second, we develop microbial processes for degumming of natural fibers like reme or for detergent additives so that the actual detergent requirement goes down. And then it is also enzymes used for dehairing of hide. Now I would focus more on the wastewater treatment process. Next slide, please. Here you get a glimpse of the three technologies that we have developed and scaled to certain extent. The first one was the sewage or the agricultural effluent conversion to irrigable water. This is the system which is much faster than the conventional process, takes 2 hours, and it was recognized by the DST Lockheed Martin India Innovation Growth Program Award in 2014. The next technology, which happens to be the first technology to be transferred to industry by Tripura University, is of petrochemical wastewater treatment and converting the wastewater into irrigable water. This system, which we have developed, is working for the past 4 years at East India Petroleum Limited, Vishakhapatnam, with single charging of the microbe and a constant performance. The third and the latest one is the dairy wastewater conversion into liquid biofertilizer. And this technology has been recognized as the technology of the year through the Visitors Award in technology category in 2019. Next slide, please. At a glance, if you try to look at these technology, what you see that all of them are novel and hence they've been filed as Indian patents. For each of them, the space of requirement is much less. It is much faster. So the hydraulic retention time is less. Energy requirement is substantially low. More important, the carbon dioxide equivalent emission, because of the operation or the function, is substantially less. In many cases, 90% reduction of carbon dioxide equivalent emission. So it's extremely eco friendly. Single time charging and biofilm based reactors so that it's a reactor with a sustained performance. In most of the cases, we are either getting a byproduct or water of irrigable quality. It has been scaled up to different level, and as you see, they have all been funded by grants from different agencies of government of India, and two of them have also been recognized through different award. This technology, the dairy wastewater one, conversion to biofertilizer, led to the formation of the first startup of Tripura University. That's Waste to Wealth Innovative Technologies. Ma'am, I'm happy to let you know that we are collaborating with IBSD through a DBT project. Next one, please. Now, how do we develop these consortia? We pick up isolates from the environment, characterize them at length. In many cases, it is using even the draft genome sequence to understand the metabolic pathway. In some cases, we also have to go ahead with a transcriptome analysis to understand the underlying mechanism. Once we have understood the microbes at length, we combine them in definite proportion based on what is exactly the finally outcome we are looking for. Then this consortia is optimized in terms of its performance under suspended condition. Then from suspended condition, we move to the biofilm based process, optimize it at lab scale, and then scale it up to different level based on the available funding and of course the need. And then we test the use of the treated water for different purposes: agriculture, irrigation, aquaculture, based on what kind of system we are using. Next slide, please. Now I'll take you to the case study of dairy wastewater conversion to liquid biofertilizer. Next slide. So, here the problem that we are addressing is the freshwater crisis, which is a global problem. And agriculture consumes about 89% of the fresh water every day. It doesn't need fresh water. A treated water is good enough. On top of it, the chemical fertilizer that is used, about 70% of it is washed out and it pollutes the environment. On the other hand, the dairy industry generates about 10 liters of wastewater per liter of milk processed. This is extremely toxic, the effluent, if it is discharged to the environment without proper treating. So, what we do is combine the two and develop a process whereby the entire wastewater is converted to liquid biofertilizer, which replaces the use of fresh water and chemical fertilizer for agriculture. This biofertilizer enhances yield of economic crop, ensures that the production of the fertilizer does not only require less space and only 10 times of the energy, but also the carbon dioxide equivalent emission goes down. So it is sustainable both for the dairy and for the environment. So it's safe for the environment and the produce has been checked and it is safe for consumption. This biofertilizer has also been tested through third party validation. Next slide, please. So, here at a glance, what we do. We develop or isolate microbes from the environment, characterize them, combine them in right proportion to get to the consortia, put this consortia as biofilm inside the bioreactor, and then the wastewater is converted to the liquid biofertilizer within the bioreactor. Then this biofertilizer is used for irrigating the economic crops. You can get a glimpse of what is the production from a chemical fertilizer grown plot versus a biofertilizer grown plot on a particular day. The IP has been protected through patent filing. We have the first to reach market advantage, and the NBA approval has also been reached. This has been selected as one of the five technologies for the uh, waste to value conversion biotech park, which is coming at Barapulla in New Delhi. Next one, please. Now, the selection of microbes for the consortia development is not a random process. Here, based on the understanding of the metabolism of the microbe, we pick up those which have the respective enzymes for conversion of the nitrates into ammonia. We avoid taking microbes which can result in conversion of ammonia back to nitrate or to nitrogen gas. So we want the entire nitrogenous component to be converted to nitrogen. So, based on the selection, which is totally on the metabolic process or the enzymes, as we can get to know from the draft genome analysis, we pick up the microbes to form the consortia and then we check their performance. Next one, please. Once it has been developed at a small scale in the laboratory, then we scale it up. And this is a glimpse of how we have scaled it up. From a liquid culture, we go to a 125 ml biofilm based reactor and then gradually scale it up. And what you see on the right panel on top is the 9 meter cube per day processing capacity reactor at Gomati Dairy in Agartala. And the one at the bottom is the 11,000 liters, that is 11 meter cube per day processing reactor, which was at OMFED, Bhubaneswar. Next slide, please. When we scale up a process, we have to be very sure that the efficiency is maintained. And that's exactly what you get a glimpse here. Be it a 27 liter or a 5,900 liter or a 7,000 liter, the efficiency is maintained. So this is a scalable process. Next one, please. So at a glance, what we were able to develop a process whereby the dairy waste water, instead of polluting the fresh water bodies, can be converted into a liquid biofertilizer, which can give us organic produce, which is healthy and at a quantity which is at par with a chemical fertilizer or even more. Why would an industry pick up this technology? So, what you see here, anyone picking up this technology would be spending much less on the treatment plant, and also instead of spending on its maintenance would start earning revenue. On the other hand, on the right panel you can see the extent of reduction of carbon dioxide equivalent gas, so it's absolutely eco friendly. Next slide, please. So what this startup can offer is tailor-made, customized biotreatment plant for different scales and different type of dairy farms based on the influent or the pollutant nature that they are generating. At a glance, the elephant foot yarn that is produced using biofertilizer versus chemical fertilizer at Indranagar Gomti. So you can see the effect of the biofertilizer that we are talking about. Next slide, please. At a glance, if you look at the technology, it's a one or two step process as compared to 7 or 8 step. So it requires less time and less space too. 16 hours versus 122 hours, so 7.55 times faster. It requires only one tenth of the energy as compared to a conventional system with no liquid discharge, no scum formation, value added product, zero discharge technology, and agricultural sustenance. So, adoption of this process would make the smaller dairies compliant to the PCB norms, which otherwise the conventional technology are absolutely crippling for them. Next one, please. Now, just the glimpses of exactly how the fertilizer work for different crops. Renifiber 1.39 fold increase as compared to chemical fertilizer. Next, please. Mungbit 1.56 fold increase. Next, please. Black gram 1.04 fold. So almost like the chemical fertilizer. Little better. Next one, please. Maize, you have a 1.19 fold increase. These are all field trials done at Gomti. Next one. And the key player, I would say, this is lemongrass. There is a 2.82 fold increase in production of the biomass. Not only that, the oil content also increased. So a farmer, if decides to pick up this biofertilizer, would earn substantially more from the produce as compared to if he or she picks up chemical fertilizer. Next one, please. So this is what we have to offer to the community, the gift of science and technology to the society. I'm thankful to my collaborators, Professor L.M. Gantayat, who's the chemical engineer for the previous slide, please, who's the chemical engineer for the designing of the reactor, Professor Ashok Ranjan Thakur, and our collaborator, Professor Rajiv Nath, who did the third party validation of the trial. I'm thankful to the granting agency. This particular work is with BIRAC funding under the big scheme. I'm thankful to ICAR for the agricultural runoff work, BRNS, Department of Atomic Energy, Department of Biotechnology, University Grant Commission, Department of Science and Technology, and most important, MHRD directly for the Center of Excellence in Environmental Technology and Management. I'm thankful to my organizations who have allowed us to continue the work. Tripura University currently, and my previous institute, which was Macau, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad University of Technology in West Bengal, where I started most of the work. And I'm thankful to KIT-TBI, where I was incubated for the big funding. Gomti Cooperative Milk Producers Union, they allowed us to set up the first pilot plant there for the dairy system. Omfit Bhubaneswar, where the second plant was set up. Surely Mother Dairy, who gave us the scum from where we isolated most of the microbes for the dairy effluent treatment. And last but not the least, the most important, the students, scholars, and the field worker. Next slide. Here you have glimpses of them who have been associated with this work. These are mostly students and mostly scholars, I would say. Students are much less, and the field workers. Students, those who have been associated with work, are placed here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, madam, for sharing your scientific knowledge. In that, it was great listening to your practical works on such an innovative work and the products or the outcome of the innovative work that you have been doing and that you are still doing. Thank you, madam. Indeed, in times of this global water crisis and stress, the technology that you had discussed really provides an alternative for environmental sustenance. Once again, thank you, Madam, for sharing your scientific endeavor. Thank you, Madam. Now, I would like to take this time to introduce our next speaker, Professor Nasrin Az Islam, Department of Chemical Sciences, Tejpur University. Professor Nasrin Islam obtained her MSc Chemistry and PhD degree from Northeastern Hill University, Shillong, India. After a brief stint as a visiting scientist at the Department of Biochemistry, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, she joined St. Mary's College, Shillong in the year 1991 and then subsequently moved to Assam University, Silchar in 1996. She joined Tejpur University, Assam, India in the year 1997 and then rose to the rank of professor in 2004. Professor Islam served as head of the Department of Chemical Sciences from the year 2005 to 2008 and was the founder dean research and development at Tejpur University during 2008 to 2012. Professor Islam's research falls in the area of synthetic inorganic chemistry, more specifically bio-inspired catalyst, metal-anchored functional polymers, bio-inorganic chemistry with special interest in enzyme inhibition by metal complexes. So far, 9 students have received their PhD degree under her supervision. She has been recognized with several awards and honors, such as Chemical Research Society of India with a bronze medal in 2010, Indian National Science Academy Teacher Award in 2016, and Professor D.P. Chakraborty Memorial Award of Indian Chemical Society in the year 2018. She also served as member of Subject Expert Committee in Chemical Science Women Scientist Scheme, Department of Science and Technology for 3 years from 2016 to 2019. She has also served as council member of Chemical Research Society of India from the year 2011 to 2017. And currently, Professor Islam is the co-convener Northeast Chapter of Chemical Research Society of India. Over to you, madam. Please take your time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jimmy. And I must thank first Dr. Shaun Roy Choudhury for inviting me to share some of our work and experiences in this very, platform where you are trying to bring together some of the women researchers of the Northeastern region. Thank you, Dr. Shaun, and once again, and the organizers. And it has been a great privilege listening to Dr. Manju Sarma. Her, it has been. I'm really grateful that you have, given us the opportunity to listen to some of the very important aspects of past and present science of the nation. Well, before I start my, maybe the slide can be shown on the first slide. So before I start on the actual, the science of the, although I can see that most of the audience or the viewers who are here, they make a heterogeneous group of researchers or interested persons from different field of science. So I will not be going into the in-depth chemistry of any of these aspects which I am going to show regarding our research. But before I do that, maybe it will be helpful to my fellow researchers, especially the young students, to let you know a little bit about my journey of science in science. You see, as Jimmy has said, I have started my independent research. Initially, I had some postdoctoral experience in different institutions, but I have started my independent research from the undergraduate laboratory of St. Mary's College, Shillong. And that was with a princely sum of rupees 40,000 that I have received from University Grants Commission as a minor research project. But like that, I have started my independent research. Of course, I was making use of the long winter breaks we get in Shillong. I used to visit different laboratories where I have already, had established contacts, and Nehu was close by. So I continued till then I have moved to Assam University, but there also I joined as a founder faculty member, where so there was no infrastructure to initiate the scientific research there. So we had to concentrate on building up of the infrastructure there. Then within 1 year again, I have joined in Tezpur University, and since then I am here at Tezpur University. But Tezpur University was also the same story. As founding faculty member, we were more involved initially in the building up the infrastructure of Tezpur University. But the point is that we need funding in science. Without funding, without money, it becomes extremely difficult to do meaningful research. So I brought the first research project I got the first research project of CSIR in 1998. In fact, that happened to be because our department started in 1997 at Tezpur University, and my project was the first one of the first one to be granted to Tezpur University, a major research project. So with that money, I could start something and move towards my goal. And during the last couple of years, I have been, or my group has been basically, next slide, please. Next slide, please. So my group has been working on basically on polymer anchored metal complexes. We have used metals ranging from titanium. These are basically metal ions belonging to group 4, 5, and 6 of the periodic table: titanium, vanadium, niobium, tantalum, molybdenum, and tungsten. So we had the well-defined goals to obtain a stable. So we worked towards we targeted to obtain stable and water-soluble biologically active materials. And also some of these materials which we have generated, we wanted to explore their effectiveness as sustainable and green catalyst in organic oxidations. And the outcome of these research, whether in the biological area or in the catalysis, these are some of the representative research papers we have published over the years. And I'll be just giving you a glimpse of some of this work in the next few minutes. Next slide, please. So we have chosen to work on polymer-bound metal complexes because these have emerged and as new generation materials, metal-containing polymers, with wide applications in diverse fields, like starting from catalysis to medicine to high technology applications, to wastewater treatment, and also these are useful for designing effective catalysts and modeling of complex biomolecules and bioprocesses. Next slide, please. The supports, polymer supports which we have utilized, keeping in view our goal of generating water-soluble stable complexes, we have used water-soluble polymers, which are actually have great utility in development of pharmaceutical formulations, as they lack inconvenient properties like lability, toxicity, volatility, and odor. So we have used this kind of water-soluble polymers to generate, next slide, please, generate some of the first known examples of transition metal complexes anchored to water-soluble polymers. So this work we have published in 2008, and then 2011 we have continued with this work using different polyacrylate, different polymers like polyacrylate, polymethacrylate, and these are the copolymers. So, as I had said, these were the first examples where a peroxo metal complex has been anchored or supported on water-soluble polymer. Next slide, please. So subsequently, we have incorporated different metals, starting from molybdenum, tungsten, and later on niobium, tantalum. And these are some of the advantageous properties of choosing these polymer supports, because of their they are not only chemically stable, but also they serve as a basis for pharmaceutical formulations. And next slide, please. Subsequently, we have, next slide. Next one, please. The next more data systems we have generated, some rare we characterize them with all state-of-the-art technologies using the state-of-the-art techniques, and also investigated their pharmaceutical, theoretically investigated their structures. Next slide, please. So, having the Indian access to these compounds, we have moved on to incorporate these systems into insoluble polymer supports. So, these are some of the polymer supports we have used. One of the most popular polymer support is a Merrifield resin, which was for the first time it was used as in the pioneering work by Merrifield in the solid phase peptide synthesis, his Nobel Prize winning work. And these Merrifield resin and polyacrylonitrile polymers and some more other insoluble polymers we have used to stabilize the transition metal complexes to generate the heterogeneous catalyst, and we will see their applications a little while later. So they were mechanically and chemically robust, and they provided easy way to functionalize them with metal complexes. Next slide, please. Since we have generated as these target compounds, these are some of the examples of insoluble complexes which has been used in the and these are the applications for activity of these compounds we'll be showing later. So next slide, please. Next slide. With the water-soluble polymers, what we have done. So this was our target, that we investigated these compounds as inhibitors of different enzymes. We have used catalase to different phosphatases. First, we have ensured that these compounds are hydrostatically stable. That is most important. Then we have investigated their inhibitory effect on different phosphatases, alkaline, acid phosphatase, protein phosphatases. And alkaline phosphatase, actually, our idea originated from the fact that, you see, vanadium and peroxovanadium compounds, they show they are established as insulin mimetic agents, as well as they show anti-cancer activity. And these properties are actually correlated to the ability of these systems to inhibit protein phosphatases. Okay, and as such, also enzyme inhibition has been acknowledged as important mode of action for inorganic drugs. We have investigated various compounds which we have synthesized over the years. In vitro studies we have carried out with mammalian alkaline phosphatase, and it is shown here. We have this one determined their IC50 values, and you can see all these compounds are potent inhibitors of the enzyme. Next slide. And then, in the next slide, we are showing the IC50 determination values. Next slide, please. So after the IC50 values, we have also, in the next slide, I would like to have the next slide, please. So after the next one, I'll skip this because I have already spoken about this. This is the determination of IC50 values. So next we have investigated the mechanism or mode of inhibition of by these complexes of this one. We carried out the kinetics, and you can see these are the typical laws of complexes which non-competitive mode of inhibition like these complexes, and which is in marked contrast next. Actually, I'm rushing through the slides because I wanted to show you meaningful, but time is less, so I think the slide is not being keep pace with my speed. I'm sorry for that. Anyway, I carry on. So we have also investigated as I have said, the kinetics we have investigated, and what we find the monomeric or polymer and they show very different that was a very new kind of observation, and so after that, phosphatage and alkaline phosphatage. May I have the slides? So apart from the alkaline phosphatage, we have also worked on the inhibitory effect of complexes with please, I have already spoken. So this is the free, I'll just quickly show. So this is a free, the first one I have shown non-competitive mode of inhibition. In this case, we can see the monomeric compounds have shown mixed kind of inhibition. And next one, next slide, we'll summarize enzyme inhibitory work. In the next slide. So we can see here, so this was the first time we could show that a P stands for polymeric compound. So polymeric compounds, okay, please stop at this slide. So I'm talking about the previous slide. Polymeric compounds, they show non-competitive inhibition, whereas the free monomeric compounds, they show mixed kind of inhibition, combining competitive and non-competitive type of inhibition. And what we have interpreted with respect to these data, I'm not going into the detail. So those who are interested, they can look into the research papers. These are all published work. So next slide, please. So in the next work, we have shown that as I have said, we have studied an inhibitory effect of these compounds on this one, calcineurin. It is a protein phosphatase. Next slide. It is a protein phosphatase, which is so calcineurin is a protein phosphatase which plays a critical role in mammalian signal transduction pathways, and so it is a key factor in multiple cell signaling processes. Next slide. Now, calcineurin inhibitors. So we were, since we were trying to design inhibitors of all these phosphatase enzymes, so what we have found that calcineurin inhibitors like the natural products like cyclosporin A and tacrolimus. So these are the most potent and specific inhibitors of calcineurin, which can block T cell activation, and they are in fact indispensable for preventing organ transplant rejection. However, these inhibitors lead to severe adverse. So research is, continuing to involve less calcineurin. Next slide, please. So what caught our attention? Because we were very much into, next slide, we were working on peroxo compounds and hydrogen peroxide, which is, the access to a large number of very stable, hydrolytically stable, well-defined macro complexes as well as monomeric compounds, peroxo-containing monomeric compounds. Next slide. We have investigated their inhibitory effect on different enzymes. In vitro studies we have carried out, and but we have used the physiological substrate of calcineurin, R2-phosphopeptide, as well as the paranitrophenol phosphate, that is a non-protein substrate of the enzyme. So next slide. So our analysis have shown that these complexes which we have investigated, next slide, we investigated, they are at least 10 times more potent. So these are the IC50 values we have determined, and in the next slide I will discuss this further, because we have also studied the redox, the kinetics of this mode of inhibition. Next slide. So this shows again a very typical mode of inhibition, which is unlike in case of acid or alkaline phosphatase. In this case, the mode of inhibition, you can see the pattern is very different. It is uncompetitive mode of inhibition, it has shown. So and next slide. When we compare these values with that of hydrogen peroxide in terms of the inhibitory constant, next slide. The values are in the next slide, the IC50 and the inhibitory constant values. So we can see it is 10 times lesser compared to that of hydrogen peroxide. So they are highly potent enzyme inhibitors. So we are now trying to study the in vivo studies of these compounds with our collaborators. So far this part has been carried out in our laboratory. Next slide. I will, apart from this slide will give another idea about some of the collaborative work we have been carrying out over the years with different research groups. We IICT Kolkata, we carried out and we have investigated and found that in combination with resistant Leishmanial Donovani. Then these are other, I will just, with Dr. Madhu Dixit of CDRI Lucknow, we have carried out some other, this one, our polyacrylate bound peroxovanadium compounds were investigated by them. So these are our results in these papers. And one DBT project, or madam may be interested to know that I had this one twining research project with Dr. Gayatri Ramakrishnan of CDFT Hyderabad, and where we have investigated some of our compounds and found that they induce premature senescence or premature aging at very low concentration. And this was important in the context of designing effective anti-cancer agents. So next slide. So these are our biological activity studies, and very quickly, maybe I don't know how much time I have. So I will give you an idea about the catalytic application of the insoluble polymer immobilized complexes, which we have investigated. So these, this is the first one where we have shown that these compounds, the Merrifield resin supported compounds, are highly effective under very mild condition in selective sulfoxidation as well as formation of sulfone from sulfur. And very recently, this is our 2019 work where we have incorporated tantalum instead of molybdenum. We have incorporated tantalum, and you can see, I don't know whether it is, how much it is visible. The turnover frequency is very, very high, and they are very highly effective. And these catalysts, actually, they worked as heterogeneous catalysts under solvent-free condition. It is a very green, sustainable approach. And it was also effective in epoxidation reaction. Those who are from chemistry, they will appreciate this work, I'm sure. So next slide, please. These are, this is just why we have chosen this sulfoxidation reaction, because these are building blocks of different pharmaceutical formulations like anti-ulcer agent, and this is another drug for the stimulant for sleeping disorders. And so there are different reasons for the limitations of the existing method of preparation. So all these have led to our investigation of these complexes, catalytic activity. Next slide. I'm quickly coming towards the end. So these are the advantages of the procedures we have developed using our heterogeneous catalyst. And you can see the turnover frequency of this our procedures is very, very high. It is in more than 3,000 to 4,000 range. And in this case, they were very highly recyclable, up to 6 reaction cycle. And later on, we can see we went up to 10 reaction cycle. They are susceptible to scale up for larger scale synthesis. Also, these compounds were effective. And next slide. So this is in case of epoxidation, solvent-free under solvent-free condition. We have said this is the styrene, cyclohexene, norbornene, all very important chemical compounds, and of course their epoxides are equally important as building blocks of different fine chemicals. Next slide, please. I'll skip this slide here. It is shown the recyclability of the catalyst, and where we have also established that the catalyst retains its stability by doing XPS analysis. Next slide, please. So this is another work we have done where we have investigated. So that is why we say it is a green sulfoxidation. It has been accepted as a green sulfoxidation. We have published it in 2016, and it was again the first paper using a water-soluble polymer. And the reaction was carried out in aqueous medium, which is very rare because mostly these kind of reactions are carried out in volatile, toxic organic solvents. Next slide. And the turnover frequency, you can see it is very, very high. This is another sustainable approach we have developed using a niobium catalyst in water. And these are the results showing the recyclability and turnover frequency of these procedures. Next slide. Very recently, in another work, we have shown the titanium, this one polymer anchored titanium complexes are also effective in bringing about this one heterogeneously catalyzing organic oxidations. So coming to the, I think, last one on this catalytic activity. Next slide. So to conclude, on our work on insoluble polymers, we have shown that these compounds can act as heterogeneous catalysts for different. I have not talked about the oxidative bromination. These catalysts are also equally effective in oxidative bromination, in phenol oxidation, and many more other allyl alcohol oxidation. And those results I have not shown here. The significant green attributes of the protocols are these. They are not only high yielding, operationally simple, they are environmentally clean and safe, and therefore they are not only expected, they are proving to be useful additions to the range of bio-inspired catalysts or reagents for organic oxidations. With this, I will acknowledge the next slide, please. I'll acknowledge the contributions of my research students. These are my students who have already completed their PhD and who have contributed to this work. Swapnali, I feel quite proud to say she was my first student, and she was also the first student to receive PhD degree from Tejpur, Department of Chemical Science of Tejpur University. And immediately from my laboratory, she could secure a postdoctoral position to work in Vanderbilt University of USA, and now she is settled in USA, and she's an assistant professor in Purdue University, Indianapolis, and she's also working in the biological field. Then there's Pankaj. He's an assistant professor in Durham College, a local college, and Digonto, he's still continuing as a postdoctoral fellow in Colorado State University in USA. Siva Prasad, he has carried out postdoctoral work in Singapore and many other places, so he's now an assistant professor in Rajkot, Gujarat, and Zinajati also. So Sandhya and Kabirun, Gangotri, Mitu, all of them, they have just completed their thesis. Finally, I must thank Professor T. Ram Sharma, late Professor T. Just a few months back, he passed away, and from Department of Biochemistry, who I had the privilege of working with him. He introduced me to the field of vanadium biochemistry. And so I picked up this area from Professor Ram Sharma and my collaborators, as I have already mentioned. And the most importantly, I'm grateful to the financial assistance which I have received throughout my. So as I have said, without fund, we cannot do meaningful research. And I have been lucky to receive throughout financial assistance from DST, SCRB, DBT, Department of Biotechnology, CSIR, and our department is under DST FEAST program and as well as UGC SAP program. And I am thankful to Tejpur University. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Maybe next slide. This is some of the, a bird's eye view of Tejpur University. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. for this wonderful presentation. Not only we, but even those who are participating, the students, I'm sure must have got a idea about the vast dimension. More important for me and for many of us, you have not only done wonderful science, but created the facility for the finest university of Northeast, that is
Thank
Tezpur
you.
University. Thank you,
Thank you.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Now, we move to our next speaker, Professor Mayashri B. Sam. Ashish, could I have an introduction, please? Professor Mayashri did her MSc and PhD from NEHU, and she has a teaching and research experience of more than 25 years. She joined NEHU as lecturer in 2002 after 8 years of teaching in the Department of Biotechnology, St. Anthony's College, Shillong. She has been the recipient of various scholarships under the Government of India scheme with a H index of 10 and a H8 index of Google Scholar of 12. Professor Sam has been working on various aspects of cyanobacterial diversity, nitrogen metabolism, prospects of biofertilizer, and microbial bioremediation. She has published 61 scientific papers in international and national journals, 12 book chapters, one laboratory guideline, and 68 abstracts in international and national symposium, conferences, seminar, etc. She has completed 6 research projects from different funding agencies, namely DST, DBT, UGC. 10 students have completed PhD under her guidance, and currently 4 research scholars are registered under her. She has been a member of MBBS MD Counseling of NIGRIMS and member of governing body Nursing Indian Science Congress and is a NAC assessor since 2014. She is also a reviewer of many journals of repute, including Journal of Hazardous Material, Journal of Phytoremediation, Journal of Aquatic Toxicity, and Clean Soil, Air, and Water. So over to ma'am, Professor Sam.
Thank you so much for having me for this particular webinar. I am, as you have introduced me, I am Maheshri CM from the Department of Biochemistry, Northeastern Hill University. And I have been working for a long time with a whole range of aspects of cyanobacterial biochemistry. And recently I have been very fascinated by its bioremediation potential of heavy metals from the contaminated water. So my topic today would be potential of cyanobacteria in bioremediation of heavy metals contaminated from water. Can I have the first slide, please? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear
Sawan,
you.
can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. The slide is
Okay.
there.
Shall I go ahead?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Yeah, okay. So as I was saying, I have been talking about potential of cyanobacteria in bioremediation of heavy metal contaminants from water. And I'll be quick. When we talk about the top major environmental concern of this decade, please next slide. Can I have the next slide? Yeah. When we talk about the top major environmental concern of this decade, it is the degradation of biodiversity, water, air, and soil pollution, melting of ice caps due to global warming, deforestation, and as well as food shortage due to the shrinkage in agricultural land. Next slide, please. Coming to water pollution. Next slide, please. Coming to water pollution, It can be defined as the presence of solid, liquid, and gaseous, including heat, in excessive quantity in water that alters the quality of water and it becomes harmful to living organisms. Next slide, please. So the principal causes of the water pollution is your domestic waste, sewage system, solid waste, industrial waste, acid rain, oil industries, and growth of aquatic plants due to excess amount of nutrients being fed into the water system. Please, next slide. The sources of heavy metal pollution in water is mainly from metallurgical industries, mining, pharmaceutical, fertilizers, and pesticide industries, corrosion, then disposable of waste, and so on and so forth. Next slide, please. So the most common metal pollutant that we can see in the water bodies are arsenic, cadmium, chromium, copper, nickel, lead, and mercury. And these metallic elements are called as heavy metals due to their high density, and they become very toxic at low concentration. So when we talk about heavy metals, the problem with heavy metals contaminants are that they are non-biodegradable and therefore remain in the environment for indefinite period of time. And main concern for heavy metal contaminant is that it tends to get bioconcentrated as we move up the ecological trophic levels. And humans being at the highest trophic level is at the utmost danger of getting into the high dose of concentrated metal ions, making them at high risk of very many health hazards. When we talk about health hazards, next slide, please. When we talk about the previous one. The next slide. Next slide, please. Let's go back one slide. Yeah. Let's go back one slide. Go back. We are going forward. One more. One more. Yeah. Okay. Next one. Next to this one. Next one. Yeah. So heavy metals actually mediate their toxicity through generation of free radicals that can be very hazardous and actually causes oxidative damages to biological molecules such as DNA, protein, enzymes, and lipids. Moreover, they bind and replace various essential metal ions, especially on enzyme active sites, and thereby compromise their activity. Next, please. There are many pathophysiological conditions associated with heavy metal contaminants. It can lead to the liver and kidney damage to your reproductive system, nervous system, liver tissue, circulatory system, as well as can cause lung cancer, liver cancer, and so on and so forth. Next, please. So because of such hazardous influence of heavy metal ions onto the living organisms, there are few established procedures for heavy metal removal from wastewaters, and these are chemical precipitation, solvent extraction, ion exchange chromatography, adsorption, membrane filtration, and coagulation and flocculation. These processes, although have been in existence for quite some time, these are not really very highly efficient. They are tedious to operate, time consuming, and expensive. Next, please. And because of that, alternatives to these conventional methods, scientists have been experimenting with various biological materials, such as plants and microbes, for removal of heavy metals by a process called biosorption. So biosorption can actually be defined as removal of substances from solutions by biological material by a process called adsorption. It is simply a process of immobilization of metal solutes on the biomass of a particular biological material. Next, please. So the process of bioabsorption is a dynamics between a solvent, which is the biomass, and a sorbate, which is in our case is a metal. And this is a two-step process in which the first one is a relatively quick adsorption of the metal ions onto the chemical functional groups displayed on the solvent surface. And once saturated, that the process slows down, and the slow second phase happens where an active bioabsorption leads to penetration of cell wall by the absorbed metal ions. And this is an active process where energy is required. Next, please. So then the process of bioabsorption is complex. It mainly involves adsorption by physical processes, then complexation, precipitation, ion exchange, chelation, coordination, and reduction, entrapment in inner and intrastructural polysaccharide networks. It depends on concentration gradient and diffusion through cell wall. Next, please. So bioabsorption, the process of bioabsorption has many advantages. To name a few, it is low cost and high efficiency process. It requires minimum input of nutrients. It is environmental friendly, produces minimum chemical and biological sludges. It has the possibility of metal recovery as well as possibility of reusing the biosorbent material. Next, please. There are a few key factors that control the process of bioabsorption. Firstly, the type of biological material that is being used for biosequestration of the metal ions. Secondly, the chemical and stereochemical coordination characteristic of the targeted metal species, that the one that we want to actually remove from the water system. And the third one is the characteristics of the metal solution, such as pH, concentration, and presence of competing ions in the solution. Next, please. So bioabsorption mechanism actually goes to two stages. One is non-metabolic dependent and one is metabolic dependent. When you talk about the non-metabolic dependent, firstly, it is the one is extracellular adsorption. Many microbes, they actually produce a large amount of extracellular polysaccharides, which is the sticky film which surrounds the cell surface. And in this, the metal ions get trapped and precipitated. Therefore, it doesn't really reach the cell surface. The second one is the adsorption on the cell surface and precipitation of these metal ions once they are absorbed by the process of ion exchange, complexation, and physical adsorption. The second stage of bioabsorption mechanism is when the cell surface gets saturated, the pressure of the metal ions onto the cell surface is so that many a times transport systems are used, metal transporters are used to internalize these metal ions. And the metal ions are intracellularly accumulated. And this is a process which is an active transport system and therefore requires energy. Next slide, please. For the purpose of bioabsorption, scientists have experimented very many different biological material, such as bacteria, including cyanobacteria, fungi, algae, plants, as well as they have used both live and dead biomass in trying to see what would be the best bioabsorption material for removing metal contaminants from water. Next slide. Coming to the microbe of interest, in this case of mine is cyanobacteria. These are really ancient group of organisms which are morphologically highly diverse, and they are very simple organisms at the same time, and they are prokaryotes. They are evenly distributed in all kinds of conditions, terrestrial as well as aquatic environments. You can find them in freshwater, soil, rocks, as well as in extreme environments ranging from Arctic ice, saline water, ocean, deserts, and hot springs. So they can actually grow in a wide range of climatic conditions. Next, please. Cyanobacteria, in recent times, have actually been seen as a very biotechnologically important group of organisms because these microbes use sunlight and atmospheric carbon dioxide, water, and nitrogen to produce a large number of compounds beneficial in human contact. In this case, in this context, when you look at it, these are amazing microscopic factories that can produce useful formulation out of thin air. And therefore, if you understand their metabolism, these organisms can be of immense potential in biotechnology. Next, please. Morphologically, these organisms are not really very diverse. They are either unicellular or filamentous, and then in filamentous they can have only a type of cell which are called vegetative cells, which actually goes to produce the fix the carbon dioxide and atmospheric carbon dioxide, and in some of them they produce different cells called heterocysts, which are mainly for the nitrogen fixing purposes. These organisms, next please, these organisms can also enter into symbiosis with various plants. Plants actually encourage their symbiosis with them because of their property of nitrogen fixation. And plants not being able to move away from a certain where they grow, they encourage these organisms to come and reside in them so that they can fix nitrogen from them, and then plants therefore can actually grow in places which is nitrogen deficient. Next please. When you come and talk about the process of metal remediation by cyanobacteria, please next. Cyanobacteria has already been proven as potential biological material towards metal sorption. Many scientists have already reported Enavena flox aquae, Nostoc muscurum, Nostoc punctiforme, Enavena subcylindrica, and we have reported Nostoc muscurum mag1 from this region, which are good for different metal biosorption. Next, please. So to begin with, when we talk about putting forward an organism for biosorption, cyanobacteria, first we have to find an efficient cyanobacteria for we have to isolate an efficient cyanobacterial strain. And to do that, the best place is the contaminated sites. If any cyanobacteria are growing in this site, it means that these cyanobacteria are already adapt to a high metal pollutant situation, and therefore have developed strategies to overcome the ill effects of metal exposure, and therefore they could be already accustomed to metal, chronic metal exposure, and would be a good material for biosorption. Please next. Therefore, when we talk about once isolated these organisms, what we have to do is we have to the entire absorption process has to be characterized in order to evaluate the possibility of putting forward an organism as a viable and sustainable candidate for bioremediation process. And therefore, for that purpose, we have to go through an entire gamut of characterization, in which we have to first isolate the organism and purify it. And once purified, we have to check whether these organisms are a good candidate for a particular metal sorption. Then once that is proven, we have to identify the organism, we have to characterize the organism in its morphological and ultrastructural ways. Then we have to see whether these organisms actually bind the metal ions, and FTIR and EDX will prove that, and FTIR will actually tell us the functional groups on the cell surface, which will tell us then whether which are the groups that are involved in metal binding. Of course, we have to do the condition optimization so that various experimental conditions are looked into in such a way that we get the best biosorption under such set of conditions. Then we of course have to evaluate whether what type of biosorption has happened. Has a lot of is it a surface phenomena? Is it an internalization? And how much has been internalized, and so on and so forth. So we characterize it and we do a distribution study. Other than that, we of course do the rate of reaction studies. We look at feasibility. That means we look into the thermodynamics, and also affinity. That means isotherm studies. And finally, we also look into the fact whether the metal can be recovered and whether the biosorption material can be reused. So I will take up one of these at a time. So can I go to the next slide, please? Once purified, we look into the cyanobacteria for its purity under the light microscopy as well as scanning electron microscopy. And then let's go to the next slide. And then I will be taking an example. We have done with quite a few metal ions, but I will be taking an example of cadmium biosorption in this case. And then in that case, we have to, if we have got 5, 6, 7 isolates from an area, from a contaminated area, then we have to actually look at whether these isolates are metal tolerant, in this case whether they are cadmium tolerant. And therefore what we do is we grow them in the cadmium supplemented media, and the organisms, for after a chronic 7 to 15 day of growth, we look into where the organisms that grows best under the metal exposure conditions, and then these are shortlisted for further study. So next slide, please. So once we get the organism that shows promise in the cadmium biosorption, that shows growth, that means it shows tolerance to the metal ion, we do a molecular identification study, which involves a 16S rRNA gene amplification and identification by blast search against known cyanobacterial isolate. And if we don't find 100% similarity with any existing isolate, then we give a new identification to this organism. Next slide, please. Then come host of experimental procedures to establish and to understand the biosorption process of this particular organism that we have shortlisted, say against, in this case, cadmium metal. So first we have to determine the inhibition concentration of this particular IC50, and for that we grow the organism. This is the first picture on the left side on top. We grow the organism in the cadmium concentration, increasing cadmium concentration, and we find out what is the IC50 for this. And why we do this? We want to know if can it actually tolerate a certain range of cadmium, which can be more or less in different times when we talk about a wastewater treatment. The binding of the metal ion is proven by going through an experiment with SEM EDX analysis, and this energy dispersion X-ray crystallography tells us, actually pinpoints if the cadmium ions are bound on the cell surface of this particular biosolvent material. Then we do an FTIR analysis, which gives us the corresponding functional groups which are involved in the cadmium binding. And in our case, we have found an alcoholic, phenolic, carboxylic, alkane groups, as well as primary and secondary amine groups are highly involved in binding the cadmium ions in the organism that we have now called as Nostoc muscurum MAG1. That means the first organism that was collected or isolated from Meghalaya for this purpose. Next slide, please. Then comes the various factors that regulates the biosorption, cadmium biosorption. So we have to optimize them. And the first one is the initial inoculum size. That means how much of biosorbent should we put? And to that, the point is, if you put too less a quantity of biosorbent, then the metal ions will be so much that in the media that it will probably kill the organism. If you put too much of biosorbent material, and then there will be clumping, and therefore the cell surface will be not available uniformly to the metal ion. Second comes is the pH. pH plays a real important role. We are still there in the other slide, please. Back slide. Go back, please. No, next one. Yes. Then we do the pH. We check the pH, because if too low a pH, then it will have so much of hydrogen ions that it will interfere with binding of the cadmium ion, both being positive in nature. Or if we have too high a pH, then it will have a lot of hydroxyl ions, which will then interfere, make the which will then precipitate the metal ions as metal hydroxides. And therefore, metals are effectively, although in the solution, present in the solution, will not be available for binding on the cell surface. Then comes the temperature. We already know that temperature actually does the mobility. It influences mobility, and therefore, temperature and shaking rates are also tested to see which would be the best temperature. And that temperature, we have to also understand that temperature it has to be in such that it does not kill the organism, because there is an optimum temperature at which the organisms can grow if we are talking about live biomass. Then comes, we also look at this saturation. As we increase the cadmium concentration in the solution, what happens, till what, how much cadmium concentration is actually required to saturate the particular amount of biomass. And that gives us actually the Q value. That means that gives us the how much cadmium can actually be picked up by the certain amount of biomass. The next comes, we study cadmium removal and its distribution. And in this, we actually, with atomic absorption spectroscopy and use of your use of atomic absorption spectroscopy, we actually see how the absorbed cadmium is distributed on the cell surface of the, or on the cell of the biosorbent material. And here in this case, we found that 91% is actually lied on the surface, 4% was precipitated on top of that, which was absorbed, and 4% actually was internalized. So it's actually a highly surface phenomena. Next, please. The other useful parameters for understanding bioabsorption is, we want to know whether it does it actually require energy or not, because it's a surface phenomena, and there are surface functional group which binds, so it should be not should be a passive adsorption and not an active adsorption. However, we find that energy is actually required for internalization, that involves the passage of the positively charged metal ion through the cell wall and the cell membrane involving metal transporter. And this is the place where the energy is required. Other than that, the binding was actually a passive process. Next, please. Then, of course, we have to see this is a spontaneous process or not. Is it feasible, or do we need, how does it work? So we do a thermodynamic study where we then calculate from Van 't Hoff plot enthalpy and entropy, which gives us the heat content and the randomness of the whole adsorption process. And where in our case, if we notice right in the table, if we get a delta H, that is enthalpy change in the negative, it tells us that it's exothermic process, and therefore it's actually favorable. And also delta G, which is negative, also tells us that it's a spontaneous process. Next, please. Then we do something called adsorption kinetics, which provides us information about optimum conditions, mechanism of adsorption, and possible rate controlling steps. And for batch adsorption study, generally pseudo first order and pseudo second order kinetics is applied to the adsorption data. And this gives us an idea whether this particular adsorption of cadmium on the cyanobacterial biomass follows a kinetics, adsorption kinetics of pseudo first order or second order, pseudo second order. And this is what we found was ours is best fitted in a pseudo first order manner. Next, please. Then comes the isotherm studies. This tells us this relates to the affinity, and it tells us that adsorption isotherm is it actually tells us how pollutant concentration will interact with the absorbent surfaces. And this study is useful to optimize the use of absorbent for removal of pollutants from aqueous solution. It also tells us the amount of absorbent, that means the metal ion or the absorbent, as a function of concentration at a constant temperature. Then two very favored isotherms that we use for this type of bioabsorption study is Langmuir isotherm, which is based on the saturated monolayer of solute molecules on the absorbent surface, which with no lateral interaction between the absorbed molecule. And the other one is the Freundlich isotherm, which is applied to multi-layer adsorption with non-uniform distribution of adsorption over the heterogeneous surface. Again, next, please. Absorption isotherms describes the quantity of the absorbent on the surface as a function of temperature and concentration. And then This is a relationship between the concentration of a solute on the surface of an absorbent to the concentration of the solute in the liquid with which it is in contact. And in our case, for cadmium biosorbent, we have done both Langmuir and Fronley's isotherm study, and where we find that the Langmuir isotherm best fit this biosorption, telling us that it is a monolayer adsorption process. Next, please. Then comes the cadmium biosorption. Then we do something called cadmium biosorption capacity, or Qmax. Qmax is nothing but it tells us how much of cadmium in milligram can be actually be biosorbed on a gram of biosorbent, that is the cyanobacterial biomass. When we compare this, in our case, when we compare this with other cyanobacterial species, we find that the organism Nostoc mosquito mag1 in our case has a very high cadmium biosorption capacity of 71.4, making it a very relevant and a very feasible biosorbent material for cadmium biosorption from waste water. Next, please. Now, what next process is, as I was talking about, reusability of the biological material as well as the metal recovery. This is the step where we check these two processes. What we do is we actually see different dissolving agents of cadmium from the surface of the cyanobacteria, and then we see for how many can we recover the metal, and the second thing is for how many cycles we can go on absorbing, this absorbing process, and for how many cycles these biological material can be used. In this case, what we have done is that the dissolving agents, hydrochloric acid, sulfuric acid, then nitric acid, EDTA, and ammonium chloride were used on this as a dissolving agent. And what we found was that this has a very high percentage of dissolving, and the best one is nitric acid. And by doing this, we can actually remove the metal ions, and the biological material becomes free from the metal ions biosorbed on it, and then it can be reused, and at least 4 times, up to 4 times the biological material can be reused. Then we have to see, since we have been doing this in the conical flask in the laboratory, we also have to see how to scale up. Can we scale up this process? And to do a scale up study, what we did was design some bioreactors. And these bioreactors are designed in such a way that they use higher volume of water or solution. And then we looked at the efficiency of our cyanobacterial biomass in removing metal ions from such high quantity of volume. And we have realized that at least for Nostoc mosquito mag1, the efficiency of biosorption for the cadmium ion has been maintained even when we have scaled up the process to bioreactor study. So then, just coming to an end, can we go to the next slide, please? Coming to an end, I want to conclude by saying that right now, bioremediation of wastewater is actually a reality. And there are many companies abroad and in India who are offering the bioremediation services by using microbes for removing metal ions from wastewater. Some of them are ONGC Terry Biotech Limited, then Campior Technologies, Shritech Biotechnology, Biotech Services, and so on and so forth. And therefore, I would like to say that this field of research right now is highly exciting. And in present time, where we can actually evaluate new organisms or already pre-existing organisms for their biosorption potential towards specific metal ions that will have relevance in industrial application and environmental cleanup operations, especially in terms of wastewater treatment. Thank you. Next slide, please. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, ma'am, for your illuminative talk. Now, I know that our speakers are waiting, so without any further delay, I would introduce our next speaker. Ashish, could we have the slide for Professor Upasana Borasinha? Professor Upasana Borasinha is from the Department of Chemistry, Nagaland University. Professor Borasinha did her BSc and MSc from NEHU and her PhD from IIT Guwahati in 2002. She joined Nagaland University in July 2003. Her research interests include development of green reagents and methodologies, bromination reactions and reagents, mechanistic studies of reaction mechanism, biological studies on organic molecules, water quality assessment, and development of purification technique. 5 students have completed their PhD under her supervision, while 6 students are currently doing her PhD under her. She has successfully completed 5 R&D projects, and she has, to her credit, 3 global patents and 1 Indian patent. She has 38 chemistry research publication to her credit and 2 books and 1 book chapter. She is a life member of Chemical Research Society of India, Indian Science Congress Association, and Indian Council of Chemists. Other than chemistry, her area of interest are women participation in scientific research, personality development in youth, environmental awareness, women entrepreneurship, and empowerment through science and technology. She's actively involved in these areas, and she's the planning officer in charge of Nagaland University. Over to Professor Upasana Bora Sinha, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Shan. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, then I think without further ado, I have to go ahead and express my gratitude for bringing us all together on this virtual platform and talk about what we as a community of women in the scientific forum are doing. For that, I think my gratitude also goes to your Honorable Vice Chancellor, who has agreed to be the chief guest and also the patron of this theme, which is very, very important. It was so delightful to be able to share the forum with Professor Manju Sharma, who we look at as the guardian of women scientists. She's done so much in policy making, and also some of our senior women scientists. Especially excited to be sharing the space with Professor Nasreen, who was my teacher when I was in St. Mary's. She taught me good inorganic chemistry. So it is a very nice experience. Well, regarding my research in chemistry, I have done whatever little I could through my training and then whatever the professional space allowed me to do. But today, what I would like to talk about is the challenges which I have seen, maybe experienced some and seen some of the women scientists. Women scientists, when we talk about, it's a global community. There are similar situations being faced all over the world. But narrowing it down, when we see the situations in India, we have our own challenges. Further narrowing it down, we talk about Northeast India, we have some more challenges, some which are similar to the challenges faced by women all over the world, and some intrinsic to this place. So today I thought I would take this opportunity to go beyond my own research to talk about, of course, this is another aspect which I have studied extensively, as I talk about when we go to the next slide. Can I have the next slide, please? Yes. So there are these situations, maybe there might be somebody in the audience. This is the problem with the virtual forum. We cannot make out who the listeners are, but I'm sure there's one person there who in this kind of a situation feels, I wish I had done more, or maybe I could have done better. So this is something that I went through early in my career. After completing my PhD from IIT Guwahati, we were the first batch graduates to complete our PhD with a very illustrious supervisor, and I did good, and I was expecting to do great science, and I had a very supportive environment in terms of my family, in terms of workplace. So At that point in time, very early on in my career, challenges faced by women scientists is not something I had thought about or even acknowledged actively. But when I looked at myself, I found I was losing the steam. I realized I was losing potential, and I was not sure whether it was my own efficiency running out, whether I had capacity for only that much. And at that time, earlier in the lecture today, Professor Manju Sharma was talking about some of the policy documents that she has framed. So these sort of things came from DST. We were invited to conferences. There was a lot of thing going on about women scientists. And then I started realizing that maybe it is not only about my efficiency or inefficiency, however we may choose to phrase it, but actually it is an intrinsic problem of women scientists. Now, I was still not convinced because I'm from the Northeast, where gender is not a very major issue, except in isolated cases. We do not have gender discrimination as such in this part of the region. So I thought I must explore a bit, read a bit, understand a bit, and that led me to do my MPhil in women's studies, where I studied about women in scientific research. Based on that, my dissertation, one work was published in Current Science. This is a commonly cited paper. I feel so happy and quite proud. It was even translated in Hindi, where we looked at the problems faced by women scientists. And I'll just go on. Can I have the next slide, please? Yeah. So this is what I began to notice as I started my independent career as a teacher, as a researcher, and then I looked around. I saw my friends, and I saw myself. Most importantly, that there is what we can call, it is a term that is used, disappearance of women from scientific research. So there are these stages, we find that till post-graduation, the girls are so enthusiastic about doing research, about science. They get good marks in the internals, in the finals. They're all enthusiastic. Then they all plan for research. And then the dwindling happens. Some of them or many of them discontinue. Then there are a few who continue, but do not, they might get into, because again, when we are talking about the community of scientific researchers, there has to be a proper academic forum. They might be there, they might have made it, but they do not have the desired professional visibility. So these are some things that began to bother me very early on in my independent career, and it started emotionally disturbing me to the extent that we can go to the next slide and I'll tell you how I felt. Next slide, please. Yeah. Oh, so this is something, which was quite disturbing in a region which says that there is no gender discrimination. These were the statistics between the male and female professors, the associate professors, and the assistant professors. At that time, for my research, when I was doing my MPhil dissertation, I looked at physics, chemistry, and maths, and I chose the samples from 8 universities, 7 central universities, 1 state university, 1 IIT of Northeast India. And when Dr. John asked me to talk, when we discussed, I thought, okay, let's see the status now. And I looked, and I think, I don't know if it is clear. I hope you can zoom in your camera on your phone, or if it is clear, but you see the statistics are still a bit, worrying, to say the least. But is it due to an official procedure? No, not at all. What happened? So I can go to the next slide and just explain. This is some of the things that bothered and allowed me to take some initiatives in my own humble way. These are small initiatives taken by me. When there was the International Year of Chemistry, we thought, because this is something I've been constantly thinking about, thought, why don't we have workshop? And then I approached DST, discussed the situation, and we came up that let's have workshops in different universities to understand the situations in the different places. So we had workshop in, of course, my university, Nagaland University. We had it in Nehu, that's Shillong, and we had in Guwahati University, Guwahati, where we were actually asking women who could not establish them. I mean, people have the dream when we ask, and this is something, I like to mention wherever I get the opportunity, that, whenever you ask any little girl who has not, really got into the rut of life as yet, you say, what do you want to be? She will come up with a proper professional idea that she wants to execute in her life. And just the previous slide, you saw that the statistics don't really speak. There must have been many women. We all know, we are teachers in the university. We know that there are many girl students. But again, if you look at the statistics, it does not really add up too well. So we wanted to know from women who could not make it in that kind of a term into the scientific forum. Housewives came, school teachers came, people who were not satisfied with their jobs. Of course, we had policymakers because we had to understand the policies involved. So we had a huge gamut of people, and we brought out the proceedings, which is one of my most precious and favorite documents, where people spoke their minds and expressed what were the challenges, what did they need when it came to performing well as scientific researchers. We're talking about women here. We also had men, we had husbands, we had fathers coming in and expressing. So this is the document that documents all their thoughts and their needs and the challenges. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so that earlier slide or that effort was in 2011 and 12. In between, of course, since I'm actively involved in mentoring and also other things, especially related to girls, I do meet them at an individual in smaller groups. But in 2019, I had another opportunity when DST, I was coordinating an effort of DST to sensitize the DST women scientist schemes. We heard earlier speakers talk about them. So these are initiatives taken by DST to help women scientists. So the involvement or the opportunities taken up by women scientists or the scientific girl community is very low. So in a certain networking situation, I was collaborated with to have a program, and we had people from the entire Northeast who came in, and we met up, and they got to understand and know about the different initiatives that are going on. Now, can we have the next slide, please? Yeah. So this is what I want to say. Earlier, Madam Manju Sharma has talked about so many policies. These are just symbolic representations of the different policies which especially Government of India through organizations like DST, DVT have organized for women scientists. Now, one thing we have to be clear about here is that when we talk about policies, there is a general perception or a feeling that people are not aware, girls are not aware. But the reality is slightly different in that sense. There is an awareness. People are aware. These are all over. The advertisement is good and the awareness is good. But can we come to the next slide?
So,
I think I am having a online interception. I hope I can be heard. Thank you. Yeah, so I'll just go back to what I was saying is that we feel that people don't know. It's that people know, but they're not in a position to execute what they know about the policies. So this is what earlier in our 2010 situation, we had asked during our workshops, which we had in Shillong, in Guwahati, in Nagaland, that what is your problem? What are the policies you need? What are your concerns as working mothers? Many of them are working mothers, and we wanted to understand the issue and suggested solutions. So everybody, because again, women-centric problems are not specific to a kind of problem. They are across the spectrum. Somebody could be having problem A, another person could be having problem Z. So it really goes across. So we wanted to understand what are the problems involved. And can I go to the next slide? Next slide, yeah. So, I was just saying that problem asking exercise started in 2010. Almost a decade later, in 2019, I still referred to those questions and I asked what are the challenges, because we had this sensitization program for the DST WASP programs, which was exclusively for the women scientists. And the problems that they identified, there were, of course, diverse problems, but I narrowed it down and I categorized the most serious problems that were identified were this. I look at it as three problems, of course, because we are having a slightly condensed version. There were more, but these are the major. Let me just talk about them. Number one, lack of mentors. Number two, lack of easy access to research facilities. Number three, psychological challenges. So now, when DST, DBT are having so many policies, having so many programs for women scientists, the women are knowing, but what is their problem? Since this workshop, this seminar is going on in Tripura, let me focus on a Tripura kind of a scene and say, suppose there is a woman who's in Kailashahar or in Dharmanagar or in another place, and the DST or the DBT Women Scientist Program, the situation which will allow it to execute the program properly is that this situation, this program or the project has to be executed in the university. Now, where is Tripura University? It's in Agartala, many kilometers away from Kailasha or Dharmanagar. Now, a woman who's very qualified, she wants to take up this project. She has little children, she has family responsibilities, and she cannot just compromise. So what happens is she says, let my children grow up, or let the family be settled, then I'll go back to scientific research. She has lost her steam. She has lost, because scientific research is very competitive. We cannot just go back at whatever point we want and expect to do good work. She has lost the ability. So this is the problem, that what are they needing? They are needing certain identified people who will be able to mentor them near home. Now that calls for easy access to research facilities. Again, talking about these two places, Kailasahar and Agartala, very far away. Suppose the facilities or the project can be executed through a process of internal collaboration, very policy-wise sorted out and channelized in a very proper manner, that the project can be executed in Kailasahar College and maybe have the main collaborator in Tripura University. Likewise, we can replicate it in different places. This will really help. So these are two of the policy-related challenges which women scientists face. The mentors, identification of mentors. I come back here again. What happens is that when somebody is just doing a small job, sitting at home, might have very tremendous research potential, but the confidence, that hesitation, the confidence lacks, and the hesitation develops to go up to a professor in the university, a faculty in the university, or a scientist in a research organization and say, I want to do this project, because it is very difficult to prove your potential. It might be there in your mind. So now, suppose organizations like DST and DBT identify a group of scientists across gender. It does not have to be women scientists, could be like INSA has the summer training program for scientists, young scientists. They have identified mentors. So while such wonderful policies are in place, a little bit of tweaking, a little bit of helping out in the form of identification of the mentors who can be there, who the women scientists can approach, will take it to a whole level of helpfulness. Easy access to research facilities, as I was just saying, if the colleges or recognized colleges with adequate research facilities, if they can be recognized to be, where people can apply in different locations across the country, That will be very helpful from policy point of view. I'm especially excited to talk about this because I know that we have shared the space with Dr. Manju Sharma. I'm not sure if she's listening, but at least I wanted to go on record. Professor Islam has just completed her tenure as was a member. So these sort of things. Now coming to the psychological challenges. Policies are all in place. We could have mentors, we could have easy access to facilities, but still, I come to the next slide, please. Can I have the next slide? Oh yeah, I already talked about this, so maybe these are the solutions. Since I'm not scrolling down myself, I sort of missed, but we can go on to the next slide now. Yeah. So this is what I want to, I hope there are young students here who are listening. This is something that I always try to talk to girls about, that, becoming a successful woman scientist, it requires planning from much before. So it is not something that we, just play along. I'll see after my MSc what I do, then I join for PhD, I'll see after that. Nobody can, I mean, for scientific research across the board, across genders, it requires a lot of planning in order to make it work successfully. But for women, you have to be even more careful, because women has this huge collision course with our biological clock, with the social responsibilities, because we have to accept and acknowledge that we are bound by social functionings. We are not in another orbit, and in order to be comfortable, in order to be mentally at peace, we have to be able to manage our social sphere in terms of the familial demands, in terms of what society requires from us. Otherwise, the society will collapse at the cost of doing science, which is not a good idea at all. So what do? We should not be in denial. People like me, we lost a bit of our career time. So this is something I tell, fortunately, my students, some have even become my colleagues. So whenever I've had cases, the girls are getting married, and I'm like, after they tell me that, ma'am, I might be having a baby, I'm like, no, you write projects now, you write reviews now. You use this time to do something which will help you in your active research when you're not, because we are in the laboratory community, we cannot do bench work at certain times. So for that, time management, not only on a daily basis, but actually lifetime management is very, very important in order to plan. Girls, I hope there are some young listeners here, should not be in denial that, I don't know, I'm not thinking about babies, I'm not thinking about marriage. No. You should do just the opposite. You think, you plan. How many kids do you want to have? All of that is very important. This is lifetime management. Mm, Creative thinking. I think this, girls, the way we are socialized, it allows us, or it trains us, or it grooms us to be good followers, very obedient, but independent research thinking becomes a little bit of a limitation. We are not used to that. We're used to listening or obeying orders. But this is something that has to be worked on, where we think about our own research problems. This starts earlier on. It starts in all spheres of our functioning, but it goes on to research subsequently. Conflict resolution. Talking about, when we go up in academic sphere, we realize that there is no, at least from my experience, we all have our personal journeys and stories, and we base our philosophies on our own experiences. But I feel that there is no such conflict in the workplace. It requires a clarity of what we want to execute, and small issues where we say, I was not allowed to do, I could not continue my research. These things often come because we have not been able to express, or we have not been able to iron out what could be leading to the distancing of us and the academic forum. I kept these towards the end: networking and teamwork. I think, of course, this is a pandemic. It is a very unfortunate situation for the whole world. But one good thing about this pandemic, I mean, taken in a positive way, is that it has allowed this forum of virtual networking. Women are the worst sufferers when it comes to networking, because women find it extremely difficult to justify to their family members or to others. Women find it extremely difficult to justify even to themselves the need to attend conferences, the need to go out, go to Delhi, go here, go there, attend conferences, seminars. As a result of which, the scientific network, when it comes to women, is extremely limited. They don't know very many people. As a result of which, they don't know what's going on in other laboratories, whether they can seek help. So this, I must personally thank and congratulate Dr. Shan, that when we heard the different discussions today, we came to understand the kind of work that's going on in each other's laboratories, which will open up, because now there's a lot of requirement for collaboration. It will allow very, very healthy networking to take place, because there's so many girls here. They'll feel more comfortable with working with women scientists. We've seen some excellent deliberations. We know what wonderful work is going on there, and it'll lead to very effective teamwork. So, hoping that we will have policymakers who will think about the mentoring and the easier making research facilities more easy for budding women scientists, and to the budding women scientists themselves, that it is important to develop soft skills if we want to survive and excel in scientific research. I want to say thank you. I think I've come to my last slide. I want to say thank you for, I hope it was a good hearing. Thank you once again.
Thank you, ma'am, for your talk, and especially it was different from what we have been listening and everyone has been listening, and it's, of course it's meaningful. Now, without taking any further time, because we have Dr. Shima Ghosh here, whose father is in ICU and she has been waiting for her turn, and after that Professor Rangan is also waiting. She has other appointments, so I'll get back to Dr. Shima Ghosh. Thank you, Professor Upasana Borasana. So Professor Ghosh is head of the Department of Civil Engineering, National Institute of Technology, Agartala. She's engaged in teaching and research for more than 15 years, and presently is the associate professor and head of the department. And she was associate dean in NIT Agartala between 2012 and 17. And she graduated in 1994 from Tripura Engineering College, which is currently NIT Agartala, and obtained her MTech from IIT Roorkee in 2001 and PhD from NIT Agartala in 2012. She served as junior engineer R&D Government of Tripura from 1996 to 2004, and her area of specialization includes soil dynamics and earthquake engineering, analysis and design of footing, retaining wall and slope under seismic loading condition, machine functioning, foundation, liquefaction and seismic hazard analysis, applied soft computing, and structural health monitoring. She has guided 35 MTech dissertations and 4 PhD theses on geotechnical engineering, and has published 109 papers in national, international journals and conferences, out of which 3 papers received Best Paper Award. Dr. Ghosh has organized workshop, conferences, and webinars at national and international level, and delivered lecture at many conferences and workshops. She has executed many consultancy jobs, both at the government as well as the private level, and is the reviewer of many international journals of repute. She is also the fellow member of ASCE and a life member of IGS India. Currently, she's a chairman of IGS, that's the Indian Geotechnical Society, Agartala local chapter. Over to Professor Ghosh.
Thank you, Dr. Sharon, and thank you, the organizers of this seminar, Women in Science, and the Northeast chapter. Actually, just before me, Upasana ma'am reflected in a optimistic way that when women has to go forward for science, then what are the barrier they can come across. So thank you, ma'am, for your nice presentation. What I should say that your presentation reflected the is the mirror to reflect the nature or features of the women in the society which they have to face. Even then, women they have to overcome. Actually, when I was going through the presentations, I am seeing that most of the presentations are related to that chemistry, biotechnology, then chemical engineering, all these things. And after that, your presentation, ma'am highlighted as that yes, the women they have to come across the so many barriers. Keeping all these things in mind, what I want to say that the most of the presentation is on sustainability of environment. My presentation is considering the civil engineering aspect. So when sustainability of environment is considered, this civil engineering aspect is also one criteria which we have to consider, and especially when we are residing in northeastern zone. We all know that our zone is more vulnerable to earthquake. It's the zone 5, and obviously for earthquake we have to analyze and design our structures. Now when we are concentrating on our this just a minute, just the previous slide, on our that the earthquake effect, how they are coming over the structure. See, due to earthquake, what it is happening, all on a sudden there is a jerking, there is some impact. So this impact we are considering, and considering this impact, we have done here the analysis of shallow strip footing. Please, next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah. First of all, let me convey my acknowledge to my institute, NIT Agartala, the research scholars, Sri Arijit Saha, who is going to submit his PhD thesis very soon. Mr. Chidanand M. Jadar, he has done his MTech under my guidance, and then he shifted and doing his PhD in IIT Kanpur. And Sri Shukanta Namo, he has completed his PhD under my guidance. Next slide, please. Actually, as I was concentrating on analysis and design of strip footing or foundation. So what is the foundation? Any civil engineering structure, it must rest on some another structure which will transmit the load to the underground soil. So this is nothing but our foundation. And when this structure is transmitting the load to the underground soil, some portion of the area of the soil will be affected. In my analysis, through my analysis, I will try that which portion are going to be affected due to that foundation load and how they are affecting, and on the basis of this effect, what will be the load which we can take off. Next slide, please. Now see, that shallow foundation, I am concentrating here mainly on shallow foundation. As the name indicates, shallow foundation means its depth is very less. Generally, when the depth of the foundation is less than its width, then we are mentioning it as shallow foundation. So here see one column, it is resting on foundation. Foundation, in other words, it is also known as footing. The bottom portion is known as foundation, and the top portion and as a whole it is known as footing. And in the right side, it is the wall. Below the wall, we are providing one foundation. So this is the strip footing. Next, please. So actually bearing capacity, as the name indicates, that how much load it can bear. There are two criteria we have to consider. One is settlement criteria, another one is shear strength criteria. Through this study, we are considering shear strength criteria. So on the basis of that study, mainly we are determining this ultimate load And then thereafter, on the basis of that ultimate load, we are calculating the net allowable bearing pressure on the soil. That means how much pressure we can apply on the soil. Next, please. Generally, there are different types of failure taking place depending upon the type of the soil. Actually, for all the structures which are resting above the soil, we can see the failure that how they are taking place. But in case of a structure which is resting below the soil, we can't see how they are taking place. Even in some cases, we are considering that the soil is homogeneous, but exactly we don't know what is the nature of the soil. So what we are doing, we are applying some assumption, and on the basis of those assumption, we are going for analysis. So generally, when the soil is sandy soil, dense sandy soil and rocks, then this kind of failure, we are considering that one bulging is taking place on the both the sides of the foundation. And when the soil is soft clay or loose sand, then thus just punching of the foundation is taking place. In between, if we are facing the soil, then the failure criteria may be the in between of these two. So in that analysis, what we are considering, this general shear failure we are considering. Next, please. Now, again, to consider the shear failure, as I mentioned that we don't know what is the type of the failure is taking place below the foundation, below the soil, because we are not seeing the nature of the failure, nature of the soil. So what we are doing, we are assuming different types of model, and on the basis of these models, we are analyzing, and on the basis of those analysis, we are just comparing the results, and these analytical results, these are compared with numerical results and then experimental results, and then we go for the optimal one. So initially we have considered this linear failure surface. This linear failure surfaces is considered, and below the foundation one zone is considered, and behind the foundation the zone which is affected, this is a passive zone. Due to that load, this portion is going downward, and this is just pressing this portion into upward direction. And see, while this earthquake is taking place, different types of waves are generating. These are the shear waves, primary waves, relay waves. Mainly in that analysis, we have considered this the propagation of shear wave and primary wave. Next, please. So due to the propagation of these waves, the accelerations are generating. So in the horizontal direction, a horizontal acceleration, and in the vertical direction, vertical acceleration. These accelerations we are calculating. We are calculating also that what will be the corresponding forces acting due to this acceleration, that means due to earthquake. So this is the force in the horizontal direction due to the earthquake, and this is the force in the vertical direction due to the earthquake. In addition, what are the other forces acting if we consider the portion which is just below the foundation? This is the force due to the superstructure, and this is the force due to another property of the soil. This is cohesion. This is the force due to the earthquake effect, and this is the reaction of the rest of the soil on that portion. So obviously, my system will be stable when, due to the action of all these forces, the system is in equilibrium condition. So what are those equilibrium conditions? Those equilibrium conditions are what are the forces acting in horizontal directions? All the forces must be equal to 0. And what are the forces acting in vertical direction? All the forces must be equal to 0. So we are calculating all the forces, and from all these we are calculating that what is the force acting on that particular wedge. Next, please. Thereafter, this is the portion which is pressed by the foundation. So again, what are the forces acting on that portion? Such as load due to the superimposed soil, and then the earthquake forces, which we have calculated considering the earthquake acceleration and the reaction of the rest of the soil, and this is the cohesive force. And when the portion is pressing this portion, so this will be just passive resistance. The earlier one, just back slide please, just back, not forward please, back one, just back one slide back. Yeah, here we have seen the active force which is acting on that wedge. Next please. And here we have calculated the passive resistance which this portion has to offer. So again, for equilibrium, this active force and passive resistance must be equal. Next slide, please. So equating these two, we have calculated that what will be the maximum load which we can apply on the foundation. And again, in that load, the one variable, this is our alpha and beta. These are the two variables. So these variables, on the basis of these two variables, we have optimized our load, and then out of this we have taken the optimized load which we can apply on the foundation. Next please. So earlier one is the limit equilibrium method. Here it is limit analysis method. In that method, what it is done, basic difference with the limit equilibrium and limit analysis method, that this is the external force. So due to this external force, we can do some work, and due to that work, the internal resistances, they are offering some resistance, and while we are doing work, they are moving with some velocity. On the failure surface, this surface, it will move with some velocity, and also it will move some velocity, and this portion, this will also move some velocity, and these velocities, they are forming some closed triangle. So from these velocities, we are calculating the external work done and external energy and internal work done. Next please. And again, for equilibrium, this external energy must be equal to the internal work done, and again from here we are getting our the load, which maximum load which we can apply on the foundation. So what are the variables over there? On the basis of these variables, we are optimizing our load, and then we are applying that optimized load on the foundation. Next please. Sometimes it might happen, especially for Agartala city, we are facing water table just some cases above the foundation level also. So if we are facing water table, then how can we analyze the system? In that case, in addition to our normal forces, the extra forces are hydrostatic forces and hydrodynamic forces. So these extra forces we have to consider in the analysis, and using this limit equilibrium method, the solution is done over there. Next please. And considering these forces and using that same methodology, that summation of all horizontal forces equal to 0 and summation of all vertical forces equal to 0, the active pressure and passive resistance are calculated, and on the basis of those calculated active pressure and passive resistance for equilibrium, they must be equal. After making this, the bearing capacity coefficient is calculated, which again is to be optimized. Next. Now, in some cases, if the soil is very weak, in those cases, we are providing some reinforcements. Nowadays, the provision of reinforcements are very common. They are known as geosynthetic, and generally for this foundation, there is one special type of geosynthetic, that means geogrid. We are preferring to provide this geogrid for that foundation part. So, providing this geosynthetic, what we are doing, mainly we are increasing the strength of the soil, and then we are calculating what will be the maximum load we can place on the soil. And now it might happen that even a soil, it cannot take say 100 kilonewton load, but incorporating this geosynthetics, it can take even 300 kilonewton load. So next please. And this is the detailed analysis incorporating this geosynthetics. I am not going through that. Next, please. Detailed analysis of geosynthetic provision. So next, please. Next, please. Now, as I mentioned that actually we don't know what is the nature of the failure occurring below the soil. So what we have done, initially we have considered linear failure mechanism. Here what we are considering, here we are considering composite failure mechanism. That means some linear portion, then some log spiral portion, and again linear portion. So next please. Then for that linear portion, this is generally just below the foundation. This is under active zone. And for that linear portion, what are the forces acting? And taking all these forces, we are considering the active force. Now, again, what it is done, that the force which is or resistance which may get, sometimes it might happen that the full resistance we are not getting. So in that case, we are introducing one mobilization factor over there. Next, please. We are calculating over there the resistance offered by the passive zone. Next, please. And the resistance offered by the radial log spiral zone. Next, please. So after equating this, the force which is generated by the active zone and the resistance offered by the passive zone, we are equating these two, and after equating these two, we are getting the maximum load which we can apply on the foundation. Again, we have to optimize this one with respect to the variables. Next, please. So same thing. And that means composite failure mechanism. Earlier one, it was solved using limit and equilibrium method. Now it is solved here using limit analysis method. So this one, if we consider that it is moving at one velocity, this one at another velocity, obviously, and this portion will move at another velocity. So three different velocities, and we can get the closed polygon. Obviously, it must form the closed triangle when the velocities are in equilibrium. So again, considering these velocities, this failure mechanism, we are getting the load on the foundation. Next, please. This is the load coefficient which we can apply on the foundation. Next, please. Now, as I mentioned that when earthquake is taking place, the waves are propagating. So far, it is considered primary wave and shear wave. But the foundation is shallow foundation. In case of shallow foundation, there is another wave which is effective, and this is the relay wave. This is propagating at the surface, and the propagation is it may follow up to 10 to 15 meters below the surface of the soil. So therefore, for this foundation, shallow foundation, the consideration of relay wave is important. Again, considering this relay wave, the active force and passive resistance are calculated in the next few slides. Next, please. These are the seismic acceleration and seismic inertia forces considering this Rayleigh wave effect, and this is the Rayleigh wave number, and the value of this Rayleigh wave number is taken as 0.93. Next, please. And considering the linear failure mechanism, now modified pseudodynamic method. This is the method which we can say that where we have considered the damping of the soil. This is the very important parameter which we have to consider. Next, please. And considering this damping, again, we have calculated this bearing capacity factor. Next, please. Now, this is completely circular failure mechanism. The whole failure zone is considered as circular, and this is the linear failure portion. So the active force due to this portion is calculated, and passive resistance due to this portion is calculated, and same procedure, they are equated to get the bearing capacity coefficient. Next, please. Yeah, same thing which I have mentioned, that active and passive. Next, please. Yeah, next. Next, please. Here, see, the passive resistance is calculated considering this all the force propagation and their point of action, so that we can take the moment. Next, please. Now here, what it is done, the failure zone we have not considered. We have assumed that the failure zone automatically it will develop, and we are just providing what are the forces acting. So using this methodology, a number of slices are considered, and on the basis of those slices, they are made in equilibrium. What are the active and passive forces acting? They have equated to calculate the bearing capacity coefficient. Next, please. This is for active calculation. One slice is taken. Next, please. And this is for passive resistance calculation for one slide, and then for n number of slices are taken and then equated. Fine. Next, please. Now, whatever results we are getting, we have compared to take the optimum one. See, if we compare, this one is only body wave, shear wave, primary wave, they are known as body wave. This is considering all the waves, including Rayleigh wave, and this is the method which is considered the damping of the soil. So if we just compare the results, see, for that particular phi equal to 40 degree, this one is giving the lower value. Here again, this one giving the lower value, and for here, for this phi equal to 20 degree also, this is giving the lower value. Next, please. Yeah, same case is here for wall inclination. That means when active and passive forces we are considering, then we are considering that they are acting at one angle. So for that also same thing is happening. Next, please. Again, if we compare the results for the total wave and this damping consideration, so when we consider the damping effect, this damping effect will give us the lower value in comparison to the total wave. Here also the same case. Next, please. Same for mobilization factor. If we consider the mobilization factor lower, then we are getting the lower value of this bearing capacity coefficients, and here the pore water pressure. That means when the soil is submerged, then there will be some pore water pressure. So when the pore water pressure is maximum, then we are getting the minimum value of bearing capacity coefficient. Next, please.
Ma'am, I'm sorry if I might intervene. We are running out of time, and our next speaker has to leave. I'm sorry.
So out of all this comparison, what we can say, move to the next slide, that our modified pseudodynamic method. Next slide, please. I am coming to conclusions directly. This is the failure surface which we have considered different failure surface. Next slide, please. These are the comparative study depending upon my present study, and the studies which made earlier. From all the comparison, it is seen that, next slide please. These are the few results which we have obtained on the basis of the study. Next slide. And what we can say when we have considered the damping of the soil, this method will give us the best result, and for the analysis of foundation, we can take into account this methodology. So thank you. Thank you. And these are the publication, and the last slide which I am showing, it is the view of our website of NIT Agartala. So if you are getting time, you go to that YouTube view. It's a very nice view. If you are getting time, please visit.
Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Thank you so much. I understand your father is in ICU. You still gave the time. Thank you so much. And now we come to our last speaker without spending any time on introduction. Her work talks about itself. It is Dr. Latha Rangan, who's the head of the Department of Biosciences and Bioengineering, IIT Guwahati. Ma'am has been waiting for a long time for this because we are running quite late, and she's a fellow of the National Academy. Without any other further introduction, I would request Ashish to please put ma'am's slide. Ma'am, over to you, and sorry about the delay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shah. So at the outset, I would like to thank you for giving this opportunity to join and extend your invitation for this webinar. So I wholeheartedly support this kind of an activity, but this is just please don't get offended. But I think probably we definitely have to understand and give a lot of importance to how do we carry forward and respect the time. So I think probably it was an understanding that each one of us have to give a presentation for 15 minutes, and so accordingly I think we prepared ourselves. But I think there is no gender discrimination as far as the time limitations and adjusting to that time factor is concerned. So I think probably this is one take home message for all of us, that I think probably we definitely have to value that particular time. So please, this is to you, to Dr. Shawan, and to the others. Please don't get offended by my this remark and the
Not at all.
statement. Yeah. So I would definitely jump, and I don't know who are the participant, and I gather that I think all of us are have been talking with regard to our subject and the work which we have done over a period of maybe a decade or so. So I'm also going to talk about the work which is actually with regard to the journey which I embarked here in IIT Guwahati when I joined here 15 years back. And so I started working, basically I'm a plant biologist, so I started working on this versatile legume which is called as a karanj. Now, so there are definitely different issues when we are talking about the depletion or the crisis of the fossil fuel, increase of the wasteland. So we don't have an agricultural land available where we could cultivate our crops. Of course, aggravated by the point that there is a high rise in the global warming and the energy shortage issues. So when we took about our research, we thought, could there be actually a solution to all these problems? Could we have one particular system that in some extent circumvent some of these issues, if not completely abolish it, but at least address and give some answers to it? So there are multiple issues, and we then narrowed down that, okay, yes, maybe Pongamia, which is a legume belonging to the family Leguminaceae, could be an answer to some of these issues. Next slide, please. So this particular slide gives an overview and a snapshot about the karanj, or the scientific name of it, which is the Pongamia pinnata. And there are many synonyms of this particular plant. In some places it is referred as Milleta pinnata, some places it is referred to as Deris indica. But of late, recently, this is the one which has been accepted by all the scientists and the researchers who are working on this particular legume. So this is native to humid and subtropical environment. So the availability of the material is definitely not a limiting factor for us, because that was one particular concern. At any given time, if we are starting with our research, limitation of the material should not be a factor and coming as an hindrance. Obviously, the plant is considered to be a gold mine, as a liquid gold mine, because of its a non-edible essential oil content which is present in the seeds. So the below panel gives a snapshot about this particular plant. It's not only versatile, but then it has manifold applications attached to it. So you see this beautiful pink, purplish color inflorescence, which actually add to it the ambience, the beauty of the environment when it's in complete bloom. And then I have given the snapshot of the mature pods and the seeds. So kindly move to the next slide. Right. So as I said, there are applications which are multifold. I would not talk about it because when we embarked on our research, we looked into all these aspects. What are its utility? What it could address? What are the problem dimensions? Where is the lacuna? And what should be the road ahead for us? So the applications are manifold, but then the prime application of this is its non-edible oil content present in the seed. It is also used as a pesticide and an insecticide, and the usage of it is in other industry and other domains as well. Kindly move to the next slide, please. Right. So giving this as a background, so it was clear to us that there is definitely a renewed interest in Pongamia, and that could be definitely made as a versatile legume with manifold dimensions added to it. So our first objective was first to look into much of a conventional study. Before we thought that landing into hi-fi science, the conventional studies should be looked into it. So the first target was to look into characterizing this particular plant in what we called as a CPT, the candidate plus trees. So the candidate plus trees are nothing but the trees which are actually superior in some characters in comparison to what is generally available. So selection of economically important traits when we targeted the candidate plus tree included the high seed yield, high oil content, desirable fatty acid composition, and that definitely in turn makes it a prerequisite to see that this particular species is economically viable as far as we are talking about it to be used as a liquid gold. So no systematic study was reported, and so we then embarked on this identification of candidate plus trees and eventually its multiplication. So multiplication was not only through the conventional techniques, but then we complemented with the biotechnological tools as well. And so that is what has been represented in this particular slide. So if you see the top panel, the candidate plus trees, and so our study site was the North Guwahati. That's the region where actually our institute is based. So candidate plus trees were identified from the North Guwahati and from the Kamrup district region. And once we had identified the candidate plus trees, these candidate plus trees were then progressed further with regard to its multiplication. Now, multiplication through conventional tools, so that we have a quick number of the saplings that eventually we transferred it to the forest official, because this was a joint activity taken up with the forest officials of the Kamrup district. And so the rootings of the cuttings were then transferred to the forest officials, which eventually has been planted all around the Kamrup district. So I'm not sure how many of you have visited IIT Guwahati or North Guwahati part of the state Assam. So all along from the river bank, from the Saraighat bridge to the North Guwahati, there are these beautiful saplings of Pongamia pinnata which has been planted on either side of the road. And so these are the ones cuttings which were delivered from our end to the Kamrup forest district officials. Multiplication was also done through the biotechnological tools, where we adopted this technique of in vitro raising of the cultures which are true to type. Then apart from that, then we then took into the activity the next baby step was with regard to looking into its genomic aspect, because there was no studies whatsoever with regard to any genomic composition of this particular plant. So the initial work then allowed us to have that stepping stone to embark this activity on the molecular studies and also from the biochemical point of view. So the bottom panel, I'll just say that the bottom panel reveals a characteristic band for a protein fractions, which is very common, abundant in this particular class of the species. And this was significantly then tested across the range of the development of the seeds, so that we could then devise a kind of a marker which is actually specific from the germination point of view. So this was definitely a kind of a study which we say that it is the first study as far as the seed development with regard to its phenology, protein profiling, and localization of the storage reserves are concerned at two different stages, whether it is we are talking about maturation or the germination stage. Next slide, please. Right. So this is again an overview about all the kind of the highlights which have been done. Since we say that the seeds are the good source of the oil content, so we looked into the physiochemical properties, the oil yield, what could be the maximum oil yield, what are the different solvents which could be used. So all this were eventually done, and then we looked into the total composition of the oil content, the unsaturated acids per se with that of a saturated fatty acid. So then we also looked into exploring the mechanism as far as from the chemical point of view is concerned. This was jointly collaborated with the chemical engineering faculty in IIT Guwahati to see that if the ratio could be modified so as to enhance the oil yield and make it much more amenable as far as the biodiesel perspective is concerned. Then the other perspective with regard to this plant was because this is a legume. Legumes are well known to fix the atmospheric nitrogen because of having this symbiotic association with the rhizobium. So our objective then was to look into if the plant has this class of the bacteria, and if it has, is it strain specific? And if it is strain specific, what is the kind of the strain and which class of the bacteria it belongs to? So obviously it gave us the clue that it has this gram-negative rod-shaped non-spore forming bacteria, which is shown at the bottom panel. And it's a fast-growing bacterial strain, which definitely is belonging to the rhizobial. But then to our surprise, we found that this is a novel bacterium, rhizobium, which we named it as Rhizobium pongamia. So this was done through the standard defined techniques to classify a particular bacterium to a new strain. So this was then renamed as a Rhizobium pongamia, which were then isolated from root nodules of candidate plus tree of pongamia. Now, whatever I am talking about, actually all this work is being done only on the candidate plus tree. So that's why the first objective was to look into the candidate plus tree and then embark on that candidate plus tree, all these activities. Now, to our surprise, we also found that the bacterium, the Rhizobium pongamia, is actually salt tolerant. It could withstand a salt concentration of 4%. It is also very tolerant to a high temperature, close to around 42 degrees. And I think probably that gave us an indication that because of this, because of a strain specificity, pongamia is not only adaptable to a highly the rest half of the panel gives about our kind of the other activity, which is a close association and a collaboration with the forest officials. So whatever emanated out of our lab, whether it is with regard to the mass multiplication using the conventional techniques, or whether it is to do using the biotechnological techniques, or whether it is to do with regard to isolation of the Rhizobium pongamiae, we subsequently transferred it to the forest officials because there was an awareness camp generated. This was awareness camp in the close proximity of IIT Guwahati, where all the results were transmitted to the local people, and the benefits of raising and growing this particular plant was completely highlighted in the local language. Next one, please. So the next one, actually, so you see that the journey of Pongamia pinnata, which started from the plant itself, then progressed it into the other aspects, which included the anatomy, physiology, and also the cytogenetics and the genomic studies. We looked into if there are any environmental factors which affect the genome size, because there was no information with regard to the genome composition of this particular plant, and whether in turn that has any influence on the phenotypic trait. So we found that there was the stomatal pore size, guard cell length, epidermal cell area, so on and so forth. And then we also found that there was a linear relationship between the genome size and the stomatal density. Then we looked into the study of the biomarker, which is shown at the bottom panel, the last one, study of the biomarker that could aid in devising a mechanism to raise a quality seed, and that could be used for the proper germination. So in doing that, we looked into this biomarker, which allowed us in assisting identifying an ideal harvest time. And this definitely would be very beneficial to decrease the seed loss during the sowing period. So in case of Pongamia pinnata, we found that the late mature seeds are ideal for an early germination, and this definitely could be used by the seed breeders. Next one, please. Right, so moving from there, obviously continuing from the genomics and the cytogenetics to the molecular and the phylogenetics, the study was done so as to understand and scrutinize the seed quality, and also to see if the genome variation which we had found earlier in the which was shown in the previous slide, whether that is to do with some kind of a repeat class of element. Now this becomes much more technical in the sense that it was an in-depth analysis from its genomic perspective. So we looked into hopping on of some kind of mobile elements. The mobile elements which we also refer to around in the plant species across the genome. We looked into these transposable elements and their role in Pongamia unigene diversity. And eventually that study of transposable elements or the mobile elements allowed us to develop some kind of markers, sequence-specific markers, which were EST sequence based from the Pongamia. So this then definitely allowed us to do some kind of a phylogenetic analysis to the different classes of the retrotransposon and the species which we have collected from the different regions of India. Where are they falling, and what is the impact of the environment onto these classes of the retrotransposon? So I would definitely not go into the detail because it makes it much more technical, but the results of our transposon element EST profiling revealed that the presence of different active superfamilies of transposable elements is there in the Pongamia genome. And that allowed us to develop some kind of markers. Please move to the next slide. Right. Yeah, so this summarizes with regard to the transposable elements. And so the results of the transposable element profiling revealed that there are different lineages, and which has been summarized in these two panels, top and the bottom, that there are different active superfamilies of the transposable element in the Pongamia genome, and they are distributed across. Next one, please. Right. Then, so finally, we are now at a stage where we are looking now at the structural component. So it's taking a full circle for us. Oil was extracted, and then we studied into the physicochemical properties of the oil. Now we are looking into the active ingredients of the components which are present in the oil. Right. And we are also looking into isolation of some secondary metabolites from the plant, because our initial literature search and analysis showed that it is a kind of material which is used as an insecticide and also as a pesticide, and many of the herbivores do not prefer to eat this particular plant. That's because of the presence of the compound called as carrageenan, and that's why the name carrange. So it's actually a secondary metabolite. It is a furanoflavonoid. So that led us to our current study, which is to look into the structural and photophysical properties of this particular compound. The photophysical properties of this particular compound has been done. The compound isolation has been done. So now we are now at a stage where we are looking into its aggregation properties and also at the fluorescence level. So the crude extract and also the purified compounds were evaluated for the antibacterial activity against some test pathogenic indicators, both in vitro and in silico. And the primary mechanism of action of the compound, particularly the carrageenan, two particular compounds were isolated. One was carrageenan and another was an kind of an substituted amino acid, which is a glaberrin. The mechanism of action of these two compounds, as far as some of the cells are concerned, primary cells cellular yeast model, and also we are then testing on against some cancer cell lines. So we found that these two compounds lead to the cell death, and that was further confirmed using the advanced techniques of the flow cytometry, fluorescent microscope, SEM analysis, and also through the cell leakage assay and the FESM photograph, which has been summarized in one particular slide that is now projected to you. Next one, please. Right. So this is the current activity which has been going on in my lab here is now leading to a research wherein we are looking into the structural elucidation and its photophysical properties and the impact it has on the different cells at different stages. So acknowledgement, obviously, the funding which has been given by the different funding agents appreciated. So the researchers and the students form a backbone for any scientist, and so is the case for all of us. So my own students from the group, the passed out, the current students, the collaborators at different stages and different phases, wherein we have this kind of joint activity on different platform, because my area is on plant biology, but then if I'm working on structural characterization, obviously I have to have this marriage and a bonding with the chemistry people or the faculties who are expert in the chemistry. So we see that our association, particularly with regard to a journey on the Pongamia, has led us to having a tie and a synergy from departments of physics, chemistry, and chemical engineering. So all the collaborators, students, funding from different organizations is highly appreciated, but we still have a long journey to take on as far as the Pongamia is concerned, and to understand the entire mechanism and the whole plethora of the work associated with this particular beautiful plant, which is highly versatile. I would just conclude, because I think the theme is actually on women in science. So it's really heartening to see that women are definitely playing a very bigger and proactive role in all spheres of life, and they are leaving the footprints on issues of national importance. Obviously, women in science is a hot topic, and the world of science should definitely be accessible to everyone. So my take on this is that recognizing women as a thinking individual in control of their life, and not as the recipients of the doles and the benefits, will be a true salute to the spirit of women, who many a times are invisible. Obviously, I also very affirmatively say that women are custodians of peace and prosperity, and they will do the job, but definitely we need to equip them, and we need to provide with the facilities. And the day we provide an asset that gives the woman to enhance their ability, obviously that day we think that surely they will feel liberated. And for this, it is definitely essential to give the woman the kind of the self-esteem they need, and to recognize their contribution without tagging it. So here I am, and I support this initiative taken up by Dr. Shawn to organize this webinar, and my heartiest congratulations to you and to your entire team. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. May I request, thank you, ma'am, so much for sticking to time, and also for giving such a wonderful presentation. May I now request Jimmy, my colleague, to deliver the vote of thanks. Jimmy.
A very good evening to all. Honorable Vice Chancellor, Tripura University, Padma Bhushan, Honorable former Secretary, Department of Science, Department of Biotechnology, Ministry of Science and Technology, Dr. Manju Sharma, distinguished speakers and dear participants. Indeed, I feel privileged to propose the vote of thanks for today's national seminar on Women in Science, the Northeast chapter organized by Tripura University. I, on behalf of Tripura University, extends a very hearty thanks to all speakers for gracing today's event and also sharing with us your scientific findings and innovative works. At the outset, I would like to thank our chief guest, Professor Ganga Prasad Prasayan, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Tripura University. So my heartfelt thanks to you for your inspirational speech on highlighting the importance of females in every aspect of life. Thank you, sir, for being a part of today's national seminar in spite of your busy schedule. A big thanks to our keynote speaker, Padma Bhushan, Honorable Dr. Manju Sharma, NASI DST Distinguished Women Scientist Chair Professor, former Secretary, Department of Biotechnology, Ministry of Science and Technology. Thank you, Madam, for presenting the importance of women in science and technology. I'm also thankful to Dr. Sharon Roy Chaudhary, Department of Microbiology, Tripura University, also a colleague of the university, for her excellent presentation on her innovative works like microbial technology for environmental sustenance. I would also like to express my sincere thanks to Professor Nasreen Islam, Department of Chemical Sciences, Tripura University. Thank you, Madam, for your excellent coverage on polymer-anchored metal complexes. Must also thank PM for her excellent bacteria in I also express my gratitude to Professor Upasana Bora, Department of Chemistry, University. Thank you, Madam, for enlightening your work on women in science and putting forward the issues and challenges faced by the women scientists. I'm also very thankful to Dr. Seema Ghosh, Department of Civil Engineering, National Institute of Technology, Agartala, for her presentation on seismic response of shallow strip footing. I also thank my special gratitude to Professor Latha Rangan of Biosciences, Indian Institute of Technology, presentation. Thank you, ma'am, presenting environmental issue. Not the least, I would like to thank Professor Sumitra Fanjoban, University. She was one of the speakers for today's event, but due to her health problem, she couldn't be part of today's webinar. However, Professor Fanjoban has conveyed her wishes for the success of today's webinar. Thank you, Madam. I would like to thank the authority of Tripura University for permitting to organize National Seminar on Women in Science, the Northeast Chapter. I must also mention Mr. Ashish Chaudhary, Information Scientist, Tripura University, to ensure that properly without any disruption. I extend my heartfelt thanks to Ashish Chaudhary. Big thanks to Dr. Sharon Roy Chaudhary, Madam. Indeed, I cannot abstain from not thanking you for such a great initiative seminar. Once again, I would like to thank all participants because without your participation, today's webinar wouldn't have been a success.
As you see, there seems to be a connection error. And as Jimmy was mentioning, to all the speakers and the participants, thank you so much. Thank you for being part of it. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And